All right. Okay. All right, we're already off to kind of a great start because my mic wasn't even working. Hello. Honestly, I have to say I have no idea why any of y'all are watching this if y'all are watching this because this is I'm simply just trying to re-record something. Y'all are crazy. How are you doing? How are you doing? How's your Sunday, everyone? The famous Pikachu stealer? No, but I'm gonna write about one. No, but I'm gonna read about one in the next few minutes. So yeah, as you can tell from the title, that definitely, is telling the truth. This is not a re-recording, actually. This is a completely new part of the story that we have not read last week. Yeah. That's, yeah, so, like, honestly, for the sake of time, let's just jump right into it, actually. Because I was meaning to get this, done, like, earlier, but, like, it just,
Boo! You stink!
it just didn't take, you know? There are, like, other things that I had to do in the meantime. So, okay, allow me to update this. Yeah, so we're gonna be rereading some stuff here today, so yeah, this is not necessarily for viewer consumption, or like live viewer consumption. This is largely just so I can get a VOD out there before I read the next portion tomorrow. And hi, Onyx Fury, how are you doing? Mochi equals stinky. No, you stinky, Orville. You stinky. How are you doing, Onyx? Been a little while. I haven't seen it in a bit. Yeah. So this isn't really meant for. This really isn't meant for live viewer consumption because like yeah, I want to get like a VOD out there that like with audio that doesn't stink, so I can read the next portion tomorrow, like as per the schedule. Also, good to hear that you're doing well, Onyx. Yeah, the hope is that I can also get this done at a decent-ish amount of time, so that like I can go and do some other things. Like I do have some retro achievements work I do need to work on. I haven't done Skyward Sword stuff in a while, and I can only imagine that they're gonna be like, "Hey, Mochi, where is it? Where's your work?" And yeah, you're saving your allowance for a Quest 3. Nice. Some VR stuff, I presume. That's pretty sweet. I don't actually have any VR headsets myself. I find that I found less how I use them was like I kept getting kind of sick of it, so I've not really been scrambling to get one. But that's cool though. VR is cool. All right. So let's get right into this. I need to stop saying The famous what now? Hi, Pika. I don't know. Wow. Talk about like crazy. Talk about of all the things for you to like peek your head out into, it had to be for that comment. How are you doing, Pika? You get $100 a month for allowance? That's crazy. That's a lot. That's a good chunk of change. Yeah, that should be like should only be like a few months then before you can get a quest, right? I presume like a quest is like a few $100. But yeah, okay. So let's Sora, what are you doing? I don't know if y'all heard that. I think Sora was just like peeking his head into a box and then he kind of freaked out over something a little bit and just tried scrambling away like, Sora, what is wrong with you? You're chilling, playing some Splat. Wait, you're playing Splat right now? Oh, I want to play Splat. Okay, Pika. Okay, proposal. When I get this reading done, when I catch up to where I was last week, may I join you for some Splat? Because I want to play some Splat. I have not played Splat with a fellow Splatters in a hot minute. So, please say yes. Please say yes. Please say yes. Please say yes. I'm once again asking for your support and saying yes. Yeah, that's probably fine. Yes, okay. Good. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna try to get this done within... I mean, it took about, like, maybe 3 hours last time. Maybe a bit longer because of I was stalling in some cases, but... yeah. My goal is to get this done by 3 o'clock. So. Alright. Alright, cool. Cool. Alright. Chapter 22. Loyalty. And yes, here we are. Here we are doing a rereading again. Also, I must ask as well, if y'all notice any, like, my audio getting cut out, like, a significant portion of the time where it's like you just cannot make out what I'm reading, please let me know. That's actually the biggest reason why I'm redoing the stream, because the audio was bad. I was just cutting out at really bad times, and it just really made it just unlistenable. And I couldn't stand for this. For something as important. For something as important as this, where a bunch of important stuff happens in this section, I need to be audible. So, or a Switch 2. I would recommend a Switch 2. Would strongly recommend a Switch 2. But of course, I'm a Nintendo fanboy, so I'm biased. But you know, Hyrule Warriors is out. Donkey Kong's out, which I've not played yet, but I've heard is really good. Metroid Prime 4 is coming out next month. This is a lot. It's just, you know, just got stuff coming out. All right, anyway. Chapter 22, Loyalty. Jessie grimaced as she stretched, and her back twinged painfully. It always hurt to be blasted off, but the effects from landing had never gone on for this long. She leaned heavily on a tree for a moment, waiting for the pain to abate. Where are James and Meowth? She muttered. I've been looking for them for days, but I haven't seen any sign of them at all. And Wobbuffet's still missing too. She sighed and slumped to the ground, suddenly overwhelmed by a huge sense of loneliness. She felt her eyes begin to prickle, and she struggled to hold in the tears that threatened to break out. She had the bushes in front of her rustle. She raised her head hopefully, found herself staring into the cold, merciless eyes of Cassidy. Richie trudged through Viridian Forest slowly, staring at the Pokeball in his hand that contained Meowth. He sighed and threw the Pokeball upwards, releasing Meowth in a beam of red light. It's about time you let me out of there, twipe! Meowth grumbled, rubbing his eyes. Let's get one thing straight, Richie said, frowning down at the Pokemon. I caught you and got you healed. I'm not twerp to you, okay? I'm your trainer, and you'd better show me the respect that I deserve. I think I'm being very generous and respect at the moment, considering my predicament, Meowth sniffed. I got blasted off by a Rayquaza, smashed into a tree, and then captured by some toy who don't seem to realize that Pokemon have feelings too. You were hit by the Rayquaza's Hyper Beam? Richie asked in amazement, remembering when he'd seen the attack on the TV. Meowth's eyes teared up as he relived that frightening moment. Twerp's doing really well against Cynthia, James said, watching as Ash and Cynthia both took to the battlefield as the intermission concluded. and completely unaware of the small girl nearby trying to buy a chocolate bar from him. I'm not that surprised considering how many times he's had us to practice on, Jessie said, serving the little girl with a kind smile on her face. Then, she turned and smacked James in the back of the head. We're working so that we can pay back the boss all the money that we've been borrowed in the last 10 years, she snarled. We're here to sell refreshments, not watch a battle! Right, James said sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head.
Hey Meowth, how much longer do we have to work until we can pay the boss back in full?
Couple of months if we keep this up, Meowth answered. It'd be a nice surprise for the boss to get all that money back in one go. Maybe he'll even reward us. We're at the bottom of the boss's list, Jessie snorted, handing over a soda to an immensely fat man dressed in a flowery blue shirt. We'll be lucky if he doesn't lynch us when he sees how much we've owed him all this time. Better get those umbrellas, Jem, Meowth said as he felt a drop of rain splatter onto his nose. We don't want all the popcorn getting soggy.
Roger that,
James said, pulling out a pink and green parasol from his belt that covered the popcorn perfectly. Jessie frowned as the slight drizzle suddenly halted. That's weird. Maybe just a sun shower? She asked as James took the parasol off again. Nope, definitely rain, he responded, hastening to put the parasol back on as the downpour restarted. It stopped again. What the heck is going on? Meowth asked, looking quizzically into the sky. Someone nearby screamed, jumping up and pointing towards the far end of the Colosseum. A massive yellow beam shot through the sky at a speed that made the air sizzle. Pandemonium erupted, and as the spectators all tried to escape the Colosseum, Meowth was knocked through a railing to the level below. Meowth! James shouted, dropping his refreshments and struggling to lower himself down to his friend, Jessie, right behind him. Ah, it's a Rayquaza! Meowth screamed as the green dragon began to circle the battlefield, firing off a deluge of hyper beams.
I've got you, Meowth!
James shouted as he reached for his comrade. Okay, I pointed this out last week too, but there are a lot of dialogue tags that that use like, you know, that say like, Meow said, or X said as blank, or James said as blank, and all that. It's just a little bit repetitive. But yeah. So yeah, word of the wise, if you're gonna be doing stuff like that, don't overuse the word as, please. I like it when people use the word as, but not when they overuse it, because it just sounds so one note. Anyway. For a cat, you really don't have much in the way of sense of balance, Jessie said, shaking her head in relief that her friend was okay. Look out! Meow screamed to Jessie and James as a hyper beam was fired in their direction. Oh look, it happened again! They managed a half-turn before it connected with them. There was a dazzling light, a blinding blast of pain, and then nothing. Next thing I know, I'm lying at a Pokemon Center with no friends in sight and some twipe's telling me that I belong to him, Meowth growled. So excuse me if I don't seem like I'm treating you with any respect. Richie opened his mouth to respond, but a nearby scream broke out first. What was that? He wondered aloud. That sounded like Jessie, Meow said, his fur turning even paler than normal. Wait, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong song because my notes are out of the way. I kind of wish that text marker like kept like the position of my notes where I had them last. But you know what? It's okay. It is okay. That sounded like Jessie! Meow said, his fur turning even paler than normal. Without waiting for Richie, he ran off in the direction of the sound. Richie hesitated for a moment and then followed the Pokémon. They burst through the bushes at the same time and skidded to a halt, stunned at what they saw. Jessie stood against the tree, shuddering in pain, one arm lacerated deeply. Her Survivor and Skorupi stood in front, desperately trying to protect their trainer from an attacking Houndoom. Survivor, Poison Tail! Skorupi knockoff! Jessie shouted. Her Survivor lashed its glowing tail out at the Houndoom, while the small Skorupi scuttled in close, its tail raised and gleaming back. Fire Spin, Houndoom! A trainer commanded. Richie felt frozen. This woman wasn't battling Jessie. She was trying to kill her. Skorupi! Jessie screamed as the poison type rolled backwards, burned and completely out of the battle. She knelt by the little Pokemon, holding it tenderly. You tried your best, she whispered. Thank you. Richie turned to see a golden-haired woman standing a little way behind the Houndoom. I hope you enjoy your last moments of life, Jessie, she taunted. Richie felt frozen. Wait a minute. Am I rereading the same part? Gosh dang it. Okay, you know what? We'll do it live. F it. Viper, you're all I have left. Use Poison Fang! Viper slithered in swiftly towards the Houndoom, fangs extended and gleaming purple. Feint attack, the blonde woman ordered. The Houndoom turned and vanished as Viper launched itself at the fire type. Viper crashed into the ground head first as the Houndoom reappeared behind it. It jumped towards the day's poison type and slashed at it with its claws. Viper screamed as it was lifted into the air and thrown into a tree. Viper, no! Jessie screamed. It hissed, struggling to get upright. It collapsed. Jessie quivered as the woman strode forwards and grabbed her by the injured arm. Jessie yelped as she was forced to stand. What do you want from me? Why are you attacking me, Cassidy? She asked helplessly. I want you dead, Cassidy growled back. If I don't kill you, I'll be the one who's killed. And I love life too much to let that happen. Jessie stared into the eyes of her nemesis, and her look grew hard as she spat at Cassidy defiantly. Go on, then, she taunted. Give it your best shot! Raticate, Cassidy called, sending out the normal type. Use Super Fang on her neck. Rah! The Raticate asked in surprise. Do it, she hissed. Like I told you earlier. Raticate refused, shaking its head from side to side. No! Cassidy roared. With a look of apology at Jessie, the Raticate lunged forward, mouth opened and the sharp fangs gleaming. Jessie let out a scream, and Meowth rushed in towards the leaping Raticate, claws on the sheath. Rah! The Raticate screamed as the fierce lights connected devastatingly with its flanks. Meowth! Jessie shouted in surprise. Perfect. 2 for 1, Cassidy said with a smirk. Then she turned back to the bushes. Anytime you want to help me out, Butch! She called. Muttering darkly to himself, her comrade emerged from the bushes. Houndoom, use Flamethrower on Meowth! Cassidy commanded. Meowth stood frozen in the face of the powerful attack. Sparky, Thunderbolt that Flamethrower away! Richie shouted, throwing his Pokeball automatically. A Pikachu then popped out of his ball and cried out, unleashing a quick Thunderbolt that barely managed to deflect the Houndoom's Flamethrower. What? Cassidy whirled in disbelief at Richie's appearance. I've got the kid, Butch said, stepping in hurriedly. You take care of those two! Go, Mighty Anna! Sparky cringed as the large wolf-like animal materialized, snarling viciously. Thunderbolt! Richie ordered. Shadow Ball! Sparky unleashed a series of electrical attacks at the Mighty Anna. It held its ground and shot a massive dark ball of energy at the Pikachu. The Shadow Ball crashed into the Thunderbolt and broke through the attack easily, dissipating the electricity on either side. Richie gasped in horror as it smashed directly into his Pokemon, knocking it into his arms. Sparky, Richie whispered, stunned that it had been taken out in only one hit. Rose, let's go! He shouted, sending out a Swellow. Use Wing Attack! Stand your ground! Butch shouted. The Swellow dove down, wings glowing. They smashed into the Mighty Anna, knocking it back several steps. Butch smiled ferally. Payback! He ordered. With a snarl, the Mighty Anna lunged forwards, colliding with the surprised Swellow and knocking it to the ground. Rose, no! Richie shouted as the Mighty Anna began clawing viciously at the flying type. Return! He recalled in desperation, unable to bear the sight of the attack anymore. So that's what payback looks like, he muttered. Payback is a fantastic move, Butch said with a grin. It's perfect for a dark type. It hits the opponent with twice the usual power if it's already been attacked. Well, payback this! Richie shouted. Go, Zippo! In a burst of red light, a massive Charizard appeared, glaring down at Butch and the Mighty Anna. Butch's grin vanished. Flamethrower! Richie ordered, and the Charizard unleashed a barrage of sizzling flames. Payback! Butch shouted. The Mightyena took the attack with difficulty, and then sprang at the Charizard, its eyes glowing viciously. No, you don't! Richie snapped. Zippo, use Iron Tail! The Charizard whirled, its entire tail glowing white save for the flames. It smashed into the Mightyena in midair, and the Pokemon was sent flying backwards, screaming in pain. Return, Mightyena! Cloyster, go! Butch shouted. Use Withdraw, Hydro Pump, and Explosion! Zippo, flying close and use Dragon Claw! Now, Cloyster! Cloyster exploded, sending a powerful burst of frothing water in every direction. The Charizard, which had recently come in close, had no chance. Zippo, Richie whispered as he recalled his defeated starter. He looked helplessly around the clearing. Butch was recalling his Cloyster, and Meowth and Jessie were cornered against a tree. They were being attacked by the Houndoom and Raticate, as well as a Sableye. There was nothing he could do, nothing except. It was a slim chance, but it was a chance he had to take. Cruz, I choose you! He shouted. The Tyranitar emerged in a burst of light, eyed the attack on Jessie and Meowth with minimal interest, and looked down at the trainer disdainfully. Cruz, use Stone Edge! Richie ordered. The Tyranitar yawned and turned away. Richie looked up at the Pokemon helplessly and sagged. It was over. Well, it was over. His Tyranitar is not obeying him anymore. Refuses to obey. This is kind of an important fight to not, disobey in. Houndoom, bite! He heard Cassidy order. He turned and saw the Pokemon lunging for Jessie's vulnerable throat. Without thinking, he ran towards the Pokemon and jumped, smashing into it with his shoulder and knocking it away. Reflexively, the Houndoom twisted its neck and bit deep into Richie's shoulder. He screamed in pain as he felt his skin rip and warm blood begin to seep into his clothing. The Houndoom swung around and released Richie, sending him crashing into the ground. Richie coughed hoarsely and watched helplessly as the Houndoom approached snarling, jaws wide open. A massive green fist swung from above and smashed into Houndoom's flank. The fire-type instinctively released a flamethrower at the source, and Cruz responded with a massive hyper beam. The two attacks collided and exploded. While the Houndoom was knocked backwards, Cruz stepped in front of Richie, absorbing the brunt of the force. Cruz, Richie whispered gratefully. Sableye, feint attack on Tyranitar! Raticate, use Assurance! Cassidy yelled. Cruz let out a massive roar that caused everyone to cringe. The Houndoom, Sableye, and Raticate all retreated to their Pokeballs, as did Meowth, much to Richie's surprise. Cassidy and Butch took one look at the burning rage in Tyranitar's eyes, and did the only sensible thing they could. They ran. Cruz gave them one last hyper beam as a parting shot, causing both of them to soar up into the air with a scream. The Tyranitar turned to its trainer, and Richie flinched in reflex. The Tyranitar halted and looked down at him, and Richie forced himself to look into its eyes. They were full of compassion, contriteness, and loyalty. Thank you, Cruz, Richie whispered.
Who are you people?
Hi, Dragon! How are you doing? Thank you for the raid. How was your stream, bud? It's been a while, bro. Playing Far Cry, huh? How's that been going for ya? I hope it was going well. We're reading a Pokemon fanfic right now. It's 3 a.m. Oh my, Dragon, you need to go to sleep, brother. My brother, you need sleep. Oh, thank you for the raid, but man, I think you should probably take care of yourself, man. I do not mind if you have to raid and run for this because it is 3 a.m. for you. Please take care of yourself if you need to. Wait, never? Oh, well, okay, understandable then. I guess sleep is for the weak then? I mean, you know. I guess that makes me weak because I've been sleeping a lot this weekend. But I hope it's going well. Yeah, we were reading a Pokemon fanfic right now, and there's some characters here that some people who've watched season 1 should, you know, be able to recognize. Maybe. Anyway. Thank you, Cruz, Richie whispered. The Tyranitar gave a surprisingly melodic cry and sat down on a nearby stump. Hey, kid, listen, you heard Jessie say. Thanks for helping me, but I need to know. Why did Meowth go inside one of your Pokeballs when the Tyranitar used Roar? You'll stick around for a bit. You miss yourself, be nice to hang out for a bit. Yeah, let's go! I appreciate it. I love to see it. I love to see it. I hope you've been doing well lately. It has been a while, hasn't it? Just, you know, time zones being what they are, and you know, all how busy my life has been lately as well. It's like it's been kind of hard for me to just go and check in on people. You know what I mean? Kind of stinks, but hey, I'm glad that you're doing it though. Also, by the way, I hope my audio is good and that I'm not breaking up at all, because this stream is actually supposed to be like a re-recording of this. Because last time I read this, like my audio was like cutting out at random times, and like it actually just became like unlistenable. Like important bits were glossed over as a result, and it was not good. It was not good. A lot has happened since we last talked. You live in your state's main city now, and you're starting to become a game developer? Yo! I respect that a lot. I love that. I love that for you. That's awesome. At what stage of your education are you? Because man, that is good stuff. You're keeping an ear out while you're playing to make sure that I'm still audible. Okay, sounds good, Pika. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So far, you know, nothing. It seems nothing has happened. I think it's usually like when I like start talking lowly, like when I said like, Richie coughed hoarsely as he watched helplessly as the Houndoom approached, snarling, jaws wide open. You know, kind of like that, where it's like my voice is just like, you know, kind of low and sounding kind of serious and all that. So, I don't know. I adjusted my audio settings since the last one, so that's why I'm wanting to really redo this. And I think it sounds good because when I did my Age of Imprisonment stream right afterward, you know, things seem to be a whole lot better. But bachelor's in game development. You look forward to when you have the skill to start developing your first game. Yeah, that's awesome. Any particular tools you're using? I mean, like any particular game engine that you're gravitating towards. Because I know that when I did my specialization in game development, when I was getting my computer science degree, when I was in undergrad, we were using Unity. I imagine nowadays a lot of people are using like Unreal and stuff like that. Okay, you're using Unity for now. I see. Yeah, Unity is a good game engine. Pretty easy to use. Plus, it uses C#, which is like, you know, it's a very ubiquitous language. And like, hey, if you use C# a lot and you end up going to like a job where it's like it's a Microsoft shop, you'll be right at home, really. And vice versa, because I use C# a lot at my job currently, so like a lot of the stuff that I can use there, I could actually use like in a Unity game, you know. So it's pretty awesome. But yeah, that's awesome, Drake. I'm glad to hear that. All right, anyway, let's get back to the cartoon here. The cartoon. Hey kid, listen, you heard Jessie say. Thanks for helping me, but I need to know. Why did Meowth go inside one of your Pokeballs when the Tyranitar used Roar? I'm the Meowth's trainer, he said. Jessie was appalled. You caught Meowth? She reiterated. Yes, but it's not right. I can't keep him as my Pokemon when I never even battled him for that right. I treat my Pokemon as my friends, but this Meowth is more sentient than in a lot of humans that I've met. He sighed and shook his head. I can't keep him. Not when one of his friends is right here and needs him a hell of a lot more than I ever will. He grabbed Meowth's Pokeball and tossed it high into the air. In a flash of blue light, Meowth was released. Orochi stood up, leaning on Tyranitar for support. See you around sometime, maybe, he mumbled, beginning to head north again.
Hey, Toip, wait!
Meowth called. Richie turned and looked back at the Pokemon.
I know I never treated you with disrespect, but you did save me. Thanks.
Richie smiled briefly. No problem. Take care of yourselves. He walked away into the bushes, leaving Jessie and Meowth alone in the clearing. What was it like being caught? Jessie asked as she began to walk south, holding her arm awkwardly.
Trust me, you don't ever want to be in one of them Pokeballs,
Meowth answered. He awoke. The nightmares and the pain were finally subsiding, but he knew it was no longer safe here. In his delusions, he had screamed, and he knew that people had heard. He had to move on. He stood up, shaking a little in his weak state. Taking several deep breaths, he gathered his mind together and concentrated. In a rippling flash of light, he vanished. Oh boy! So that's some stuff that happened. Who could that mysterious figure be at the end? I wonder. Who could it be? I mean, I know who it is, but you know. Okay. Now then, that is chapter 22. Let's keep this momentum going, shall we? Chapter 23. Hunter. "400 years ago.
My lord, I have crafted it,
The short, humped-backed man said, bowing reverently before the king of Pokelantis.
Where is it?
The king demanded, gripping his armrest more tightly.
Better yet, what is it, and how will it work?
Forgive me, my lord, but it shall take time to explain how I created the technology needed for this, the man said, licking dry lips in fear of the insane king's response. The king looked at him impassively for a moment, and then nodded.
Make it brief,
he growled. Yes, my lord, the man said, the relief evident in his eyes. You know that I recently traveled to the city of Pokemopolis to exchange apprentices. While there, I found out that the smith of Pokemopolis had discovered a way to trap both people and Pokemon within objects. Trap the Pokemon? The king asked, interest beginning to glitter in his eyes.
Yes, my lord.
The smith would not tell me how he accomplished this, but he demonstrated it by trapping and releasing an Alakazam within a spoon.
Spoon?
The king asked, his eyes narrowing in suspicion.
Do you speak to mock me with this lie, Smith? No, my lord, I swear it is no lie,
the smith protested, beginning to perspire.
What significance could a spoon possibly have?
The king sneered.
No ruler would use an object that cannot be construed as powerful. My lord,
the smith said hurriedly, the spoon is the symbol of Alakazam. It could be that by trapping it within a spoon, it heightens the Pokemon's own powers. And if the city were to be attacked and looted, the spoon would remain safe. What warlord would want to claim a spoon as a symbol of his victory? The Pokemon itself would remain safe in case of invasion. Yes, the king hissed, stroking his chin in thought. That makes sense. He suddenly snapped to attention and glowered at the smith, making him recoil. If the smith of Pokemopolis refused to reveal the technology, how did you obtain it? He demanded. I used my haunter to hypnotize him, lord. While under the spell, he revealed to me every detail of the process. And you have used this information to craft an object of your own that can trap a Pokemon, the king asked. Yes, my lord. How long will it be trapped for? Until it is released by the bearer, my lord.
Where is the object?
The king demanded. The smith turned and beckoned towards the doorway. From it, the smith's new apprentice appeared, carrying a silk-lined tray covered by an elegant blanket. The apprentice bowed once and reached them and knelt, proffering the tray high. The king leaned forwards expectantly as the smith swept off the blanket. His face fell.
Smith?
He growled dangerously.
Yes, my lord? Where is the object? I did not ask for 2 rocks.
These rocks are the objects, my lord,
the smith began. Rocks, the king repeated. Yes, my lord. Why rocks? A rock is easily mistaken for another, my lord. These rocks have been shaped into a perfect sphere to distinguish them. If a thief were to look for the objects, he would never suspect a rock, and thus they would be left alone. What does the sphere represent? The king growled. The smith felt himself begin to shake as he heard the danger in the king's voice. It represents the world, my lord, he said, licking dry lips once again, and your eventual conquest of it. The king looked at the smith for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. The smith was stunned. He'd never heard the king laugh before, not even when he was a child. Very good, Smith. You have evaded the Stark Pit for now, he chuckled. Tell me, though, why have you brought me two? If my lord desires a second or a third Pokemon captured, he will be ready, the smith answered. The king chuckled again and waved his hand in dismissal. The smith almost tripped over himself in his haste to leave, his apprentice following behind. The king clicked his fingers, and a guard appeared at his side. Bring me the clay doll, he ordered. The guard nodded and vanished, returning moments later with a Pokemon. The king looked at it momentarily, and then picked up one of the two stone spheres. He held it carefully, noting the small square hole at one end, and then turned back to the Pokemon. You will be a gift for my brother in Hooeen, he said. Serve him well. He raised the sphere over his head, pointing the hole towards the Pokemon, and waited. A light tingle began playing over his fingertips, and he closed his eyes expectantly. There was a rushing sound, and when the king opened his eyes, the clay doll had vanished. He immediately put his eye to the hole and grinned as he saw purple energy swirling inside. Excellent, he murmured. Ho-Oh will soon be mine.
And, well, yeah, okay, so something happened that I don't know if is a good thing. Doesn't that just shiver your timbers? Shivers my timbers a little bit. Ugh. 400 years later. Giovanni marked his page carefully and closed the book, placing it back onto his desk. He turned and looked out of his office window thoughtfully. He had read it several times, and he knew that every word of it was true. your Tims be shivering. Yeah! One of his undercover agents had discovered Pokemopolis almost a decade ago, and accidentally released the Alakazam from the spoon. A few months ago, a team had uncovered what they believed were the ruins of Pokelantis, nearby Pewter City. While exploring its many secret tunnels, they had come across a gigantic hole in the ground that was covered in scorch marks. They had deduced that this must have been the Stark Pit, once home to the legendary Pokemon Heatran. Giovanni grinned. Heatran was, of course, no longer there. It had long since made its home in the far north of Sinnoh, before its capture only a couple of hours ago with a Dark Ball. Mentally, he counted all of the legendaries that they had managed to obtain. Heatran, Uxie, Raikou, Suicune, Regirock, Regice, Registeel, Rayquaza, Zapdos, Articuno, Mesprit, Groudon, and now Celebi thanks to Paul, although it still had to be brought back to HQ. He frowned and thought. He was sure that there was one that he was forgetting. There was a knock at the door. Enter, Giovanni called neutrally, still looking out the window. The door opened and closed quietly, but the footsteps that approached his desk radiated confidence. I've captured the remaining Sinnoh legendaries, the woman said in a sleek voice that made the hair on Giovanni's neck stand up. He turned slowly and watched impassively as she emptied a small bag of Dark Balls onto his desk. All? He asked, raising an eyebrow. She smirked. I have to say that your assignment was unusual, she said. My clients normally ask me to look for rare Pokemon, not legendaries, and I've never had to capture them with a Pokeball after petrifying them before. I prefer the convenience of a Pokeball, Giovanni replied coolly. The woman shrugged. We all have our preferences, she said. I must admit, though, your collection intrigues me. Why do you want to collect all the legendary Pokémon?
That, Giovanni stated coldly, is my own business.
The woman stared back at him unflinchingly, challenge in her eyes.
You can collect your fee at the front desk, he said, dismissing her.
He looked at him disdainfully for a moment and then turned on her wheels and walked towards the exit.
Oh, and Jay,
Giovanni added, causing her to pause.
Did you find Latios?
The last Latios died in Altamare City several years ago, she answered without turning around. There are none left alive for me to capture.
I see,
Giovanni sighed, disappointed.
Don't go too far, Jay. I may need your services again.
I'm a Pokemon hunter, she said coldly. I go where my clients are. She walked out of the room, her head held high, although she was inwardly seething that Giovanni had come out of the confrontation with the advantage. Giovanni sighed and sat in his chair.
So, Latios is gone after all, he thought dully. Paul was right. This was all for nothing. Damn that Namba for mixing up Latios with Latias! Damn Annie and Oakley for killing it!
He smashed his fist angrily onto the top of his desk. A concealed drawer popped open and hit him in the stomach. He roared and wrenched the drawer out of the desk and threw it across the room where it smashed. He stood and glared around the room, his chest heaving with rage. A glitter caught his eye from the ruined drawer, and he walked over to it curiously. A smile lit his face. Of course, he muttered as he delicately lifted the object from the wreckage. I stole this from the president when I took over Silphco. He strode quickly back to his desk, jabbing his finger on the intercom button.
Namba, get up here now!
He roared into the speaker. James crumpled, shivering, the moment that wheezing passed over Ilex Beach. Paul snorted disdainfully as he leaped gracefully off the back of his Magnezone, recalling it as he landed. Don't tell me that's the first time you've ever had wheezing fly you around, he said cuttingly.
Yes, actually,
James gasped.
It's the first time I crossed an ocean by dangling underneath a Pokemon, too, and the first time I've ever hung in midair in the middle of a storm above a bunch of whirlpools.
Paul shook his head and began to walk up the beach towards the nearby trees. James struggled to his feet and staggered after him, wheezing, chagging behind.
Hey, where are you going? Where are we?
He asked. Azalea Beach, Paul called back. To get to Azalea Town, we have to pass through the edge of Ilex Forest up ahead.
And why exactly are we in Azalea Town?
James panted, struggling to catch up. Kurt, Paul replied. Ash and May lagged a little ways behind Brock, Dawn, and Pichu and Ray as they walked towards Vermilion City. It was early evening, and both of them were feeling a little awkward from revealing their feelings the night before. May looked at Ash, blushed, and quickly turned away. Ash looked at May, tripped, and fell to the ground face first. Dawn looked back at Ash and May, rolled her eyes, and kept on walking. May sighed and helped an embarrassed Ash to his feet. Thanks, May, he muttered, brushing off some dirt. You know, Ash, you don't have to act differently just because we kissed, May said. You barely said anything to me all day. Ash looked at her in surprise. I thought that you were the one acting different, he said. I've been waiting for you to say something to me for hours. May sighed. I think we need to work on this a little, she suggested. Guys! Ray shouted from ahead. Look, it's Vermilion City! Ash and May ran up to where Brock, Dawn, Pikachu, and Ray stood, waiting at the top of a slight incline. Together, the six of them looked down upon the pristine city, and the glittering bay as it lapped gently against the pure silver beach. I'd forgotten how beautiful it was, Ray whispered. Pika, Pikachu agreed, perching on her shoulder. Ray gave a sudden grin and began to run towards the city. Catch me if you can, she called. Can't wait to try out that beach. But Ray, wait for us! Brock shouted. Brock shouted after her. He began to run after her, followed closely by Ash, May, and Dawn. The run soon turned into a race to see who could reach the city first. Ray began to laugh when she realized that she was well out in front. The laugh turned into a scream of fear as a narrow Tyrian beam of light shot down from the sky, impacting the ground just in front of her. The beam began to widen and turn, transforming into a vortex, and a dark shape began to materialize within it. Bayleaf! Ash shouted, throwing a Pokeball and running towards Ray. Use Razor Leaf! Hey! Bayleaf nodded. I can't do Bayleaf's voice, I'm sorry. Twirling her head and sending a flurry of vicious, sharp leaves towards the mysterious shape still hidden in the vortex. The figure crouched and extended one arm. The razor leaves hit a thin barrier projected by the arm and shattered into dozens of pieces. Vine Whip! Ash ordered. Bayleaf extended her vines and shot them towards the figure, but it twirled its hand once, and the vines circled backwards, slamming into Bayleaf instead. Bayleaf! Ash shouted, as the grass type was thrust backwards, screaming in pain. Pikachu, try a Thunderbolt! He reached Ray as Pikachu unleashed the electric attack and began to drag the seemingly frozen trainer backwards. He gritted his teeth and looked towards the figure as it easily deflected Pikachu's attack, and the vortex began to disintegrate. The figure crossed its arms, and from within the dying cyclone, its eyes began to glow a neon blue. It suddenly uncrossed both arms, and the vortex burst apart completely. May, Dawn, and Ray stood immobile as they looked upon the strange creature. Ash, Brock, and Pikachu all gaped at it as it levitated slightly in front of them, taking in its feline shape and shuddering as its cold personality washed over them. Its cape fluttered slightly as a light breeze began to blow towards them. Ash looked into his cold eyes and saw them soften slightly with recognition. So, after all these years, we meet again, the cape figure said telepathically. Ever since you saved my life in Johto, I've wondered if I would cross your path for a third time. Mewtwo, Ash whispered. Yeah, so that's who the figure was. Yeah, I guess we would find out soon enough who that was. So what was I doing being coy? I don't know. I like being coy, I guess. I don't know, I think it's funny. Alright. Now, Chapter 24, Theft. May turned in her sleeping bag, her mouth opened slightly in her sleep. She breathed slowly and heavily, her chest rising up and down in a steady motion. From the nearby fire, Drew sat watching, his face partially hidden in shadow from the blackness of the night. He watched her quietly, observing the contours of her body and her slight motions. His gaze lingered for a moment on her soft lips, and he felt a stirring in his chest. He let out a small sigh of pleasure and contentment, and lay back on his own sleeping bag, staring upwards at the clear sky. Tomorrow, they would arrive in Mahogany Town, where May is planning to enter a Pokemon contest being held 2 days after. He grinned and patted his pants pocket, feeling the ribbon case press into his thigh. He already had his 5 ribbons, so he didn't need to enter. I'll tell her after the contest, he decided. After she wins, I'll tell her how much I want to be with her. With a sizzling hiss, the fire burnt itself out, and Drew closed his eyes, feeling the comfortable warmth of sleep steal over him. 3 days, he thought, the words echoing in his head. 3 days. 3 days. 3 days. 3 days. He awoke, the tears flowing thick and heavy down his face. He sat up, struggling to contain his emotions, but to no avail. The tears continued to leak from his eyes, and eventually he just gave up and let them overcome him. Those dreams were just memories. Memories of a near-forgotten time when the difficulties of life seemed no greater than earning that next ribbon. Those times were gone now, and no matter how much he regretted his mistakes, no matter how much he wished that he had chosen differently, no matter how much that he had tried to fix what had happened, he knew that those times would never be back. They were little more than dreams, faint traces of the person that he had used to be, of the person that he wished he still was, a person who knew success and friendship, a person who knew love. The young Firo sat despondently on a low branch, barely hidden from view by the foliage. For days now it had sat there, waiting. The Firo was still small, barely old and large enough to have left its nest. Yet now it lived alone, parted from the one that had saved it from certain death. It let out a melancholic croak and shivered against the bark. When its trainer had been captured and his Pokemon seized, only the Firo had escaped. The Team Rocket grunts had failed to notice the small flying type hidden in the trees. It had followed them to their base and had seen its trainer forced roughly inside. It had not seen him since. The Firo's attention was distracted by the sound of shouting coming from the rocket base. Curious, it poked its beak through the foliage for a look. A tall, muscular man with long, spiky, steel gray hair emerged from a door, running hard and panting heavily. 3 Team Rocket grunts were hard on his heels and reaching for their Pokeballs. Flapping its little wings, the Firo emerged from the tree and flew straight towards the 4 quickly moving people. The man being pursued saw the quickly approaching Firo and let out a yelp of surprise, ducking his head instinctively and tripping. The Firo swept past him and took aim at the lead grunt, its beak beginning to spin. The grunt let out a yell as the drill pet connected and he was driven back into his 2 peers. The Firo's temper began to rise as it saw the black uniforms emblazoned with a big red R, the sign of the ones who had taken away its master. It let out an enraged squawk of anger and began to launch a series of sharp and well-placed pecks at the 3 rocket grunts. They yelled in pain at the assault and began to beat a hasty retreat. Silver climbed to his feet and proffered an arm to the flying type.
Looks like we've got ourselves a common enemy,
He said as the Firo landed on his arm.
What made you eat the rockets so much?
Hey, they're all Rafi.
The Firo croaked. Silver raised an eyebrow.
Jaguars, no kidding. Brutal. Sorry to hear that, kid, even though I don't really understand what you're saying. Still, any enemy of the rockets is a friend of mine.
Fee?
The Firo asked, and Silver's gaze darkened. The Firo's question was obvious.
The rockets have done nothing but interfere with my life ever since I was a kid. They stole my father's prized Parasect, they used me to try and capture Moltres, but worst of all, they killed my brother. His son never even found out who he was.
He gritted his teeth and clenched his fist angrily, swallowing hard against the rage that threatened to seize control of him. The Firo croaked sympathetically, and Silver jerked his head, coming back to reality.
We better go before some competent grunts show up, he said. Lead the way, kid.
Hey!
The Firo agreed, sweeping its wings and soaring into the sky. Silver noted its direction and began to follow, never once taking his eyes off the Pokemon.
There's something funny about that bird,
he muttered. The old man made his final careful adjustment and leaned back with a sigh. His arthritic fingers were aching worse than ever, but he finally completed it. What he knew would be the last apricorn ball that he would ever make. The door smashed open, and Kurt whirled around in surprise. Paul stormed inside, his Magnezone close behind. He slammed the door behind him and stared at the ancient smith for a moment before walking quickly towards him.
What?
Kurt managed to get out before Paul grabbed him by the collar and lifted him against the wall. Kurt floundered helplessly against his grip.
Where is it?
Paul hissed.
Where's what?
Kurt asked in fear.
The GS ball! I know that you have it here somewhere and that you've been studying it for 9 years. Where is it? Gone!
Kurt spluttered, his face beginning to turn purple.
Where?
Kurt roared. Paul roared.
Kanto! Kurt wheezed. I gave it to a young woman who knows Professor Oak. He's been asked to take it by him. She was supposed to give it to him. She took off on her Pidgeot right after I gave it to her, I swear!
When? Paul breathed menacingly.
When? Only a couple days ago.
Kurt whispered. Paul relaxed his grip and allowed Kurt to slide to the floor. He turned and began to walk towards the door, pausing only briefly to pocket the apricorn ball that Kurt had so lovingly crafted. Magnezone Thunder Wave him, he ordered. Kurt let out a cry as the electrical jolt shook through his system, paralyzing his stiff old joints. His eyes watered in pain and shame as Paul and his Pokemon left the house, unable to move even a muscle. Why? He managed to wheeze before the pain became too much, and he lapsed into unconsciousness. So yeah, Paul's kind of a butthead, isn't he? Isn't he? I mean, he's always been a butthead, but like, he's especially a butthead this time. Alright, Chapter 25, Presents. There are several more specimens that I require, Giovanni said, looking out the window at the mountainous landscape before him. They are, Jay asked coldly. Kyogre, Manaphy, Jirachi, Latias, and Deoxys, Giovanni responded. You've located the positions of all but Latias. Jay raised an eyebrow. Impressive, she said sleekly. How'd you manage to do that? Kyogre is currently nearby the sea temp. A myth, Jay interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. A fact, Giovanni responded coldly, turning to face the tall, slim Pokemon trainer. I've known the location of the Sea Temple for a long time. We infiltrated the organization of a man known as the Phantom several years ago. He's tried several times now to steal the temple's riches, but has been defeated each time by the Kyogre, along with many other water Pokemon. The Kyogre now seems to live in the temple permanently as its protector. Manaphy? Jay asked. Also at the Sea Temple, Giovanni responded. Reference to movie 9, aka the Advanceshipping movie, by the way! So that makes it peak. Jirachi? Why don't I just upload the information into your Pokétch? Giovanni suggested. I'm a busy man, and I don't have time to personally tell you every location. Jay glowered at him, but then nodded. Oh, and I also require a Soldew, Giovanni said lightly. I don't suppose you'll tell me why? Jay asked dryly. Giovanni smiled, his demeanor turning from jovial to menacing. You don't suppose right, he said. Don't take the whole thing. That'll only cause a disaster. All I need is the core. What about my fee? She asked. After these 5 Pokemon and the Soldew, I will only need Entei, Moltres, Mew, and Ho-Oh, Giovanni said. Consider your payment double what it was for all the Sinnoh legendary Pokemon. Deal, she said, grinning. The door burst open, and a grunt ran in, panting heavily. Sir, he gasped, there's been an incident! Silver's escaped! What the hell is that thing? Ray shrieked, regaining her senses at last. Oh no, Brock muttered, covering his eyes. Thing? Mewtwo demanded of Ray. Thing? I walk under the same sky, I breathe the same air, I drink the same water as you, and yet you call me a thing? Mewtwo glared at all of them, his personality cold and hostile once more. Humans are all the same, he muttered. They care only for themselves. Mewtwo, you know that's not true, Ash said. You remember what happened in Johto? That every person in this world is like Team Rocket. Those who aren't are too few and far between to bother spending any thoughts on, Mewtwo retorted. Just a couple of minutes ago, you said I have wondered if I would cross your path for a 3rd time, Ash said softly. Mewtwo glared at him, but was quickly distracted when he realized that he was in an open field. Why am I here? He demanded suddenly. Same as any of us, I guess, Brock answered. To live. If this is your attempt at humor, Mewtwo growled. I meant, why am I here in this field? I was supposed to materialize directly in Vermilion City. Oh, well, you didn't miss it by much, Brock answered, pointing. It's just down this hill. This is very disquieting, Mewtwo muttered. I know of nothing that can interrupt my teleportation and lead me to the land elsewhere. He turned suddenly to May. You, he growled. There is a dark presence overshadowing you. You bear evil's mark. Me? May squeaked, trembling as Mewtwo's cold personality washed over her. Mewtwo raised a paw and twisted it slightly. A dark purple aura enveloped his paw and began to glow brightly. May gasped as the same aura surrounded her, causing her to levitate. Hey, what are you doing? Ash yelled as she soared higher, jumping to try and drag her back down. Mewtwo ignored him, twisting a paw and causing her to rise even higher above the ground. I can't get it, he growled angrily, more to himself, although everyone could hear him. I can feel it, but I just can't grasp it! Mewtwo! Ash shouted. Mewtwo jerked around and glared at him. What? He demanded. Please, bring her down, Ash begged. She's too high and she could be hurt if she falls. Mewtwo gave one last surge of energy, but when the dark presence refused to be dislodged, he relented, returning May to the ground. Your presence endangers everyone here, he growled to the coordinator. I don't know what it is that you carry, but only an object crafted from darkness can resist my psychic powers. Hey! Ash shouted, stepping in front of May protectively. Stop saying that! May is the purest person I know, and she would never hurt anyone, let alone put anyone in danger by carrying a dark object. I think all those years of solitude have damaged your mind, clone. Cool it, Ash, Rock snapped, jumping in between the two. Ash glared at Mewtwo menacingly, who stared back coldly. You're indeed unique among humans, and yet unnervingly similar, Mewtwo stated. Everyone shuddered at the tone of his words. You do not hesitate risking your life to save others, but at the same time, you jeer at those same people with barbed words designed only to hurt. You are wrong. Humans are all the same. They care only for their own kind. His eyes stared into May's, glowing a bright blue for a moment. Don't be so sure of your own assertions, human. She is not so pure as you think. Where she travels, hurt and despair follow. Whether she is a willing bearer of her burden or aware of what harm it causes, I do not know. But she carries evil with her, and it is an evil that is best left hidden again for eternity. Mewtwo turned and vanished. With his disappearance, May collapsed into Ash's arms, shivering uncontrollably, her eyes wide and staring. May, Ash whispered softly. As he cradled her gently, a voice flashed through his mind, a voice that he recognized as Mewtwo's. Whether willing or not, we are irrevocably and eternally linked to one another, he said. I can hear your thoughts just as easily as you can hear mine. Anger does much to alter one's personality. I, of all creatures, understand this most. I know that in your heart you regret your degradation of myself. Through our link, I can sense how much you care for this girl, and I know that it is this caring that sparked your outburst. Such feelings are beyond my comprehension. However, you did save my life once, and for all the creatures on this planet, and of all the creatures on this planet, you are the closest there is to a friend. For this, I forgive your outburst, although I shall not forget it. We are permanently linked by our thoughts. We are one, but we are not the same. In times of danger, we have to carry each other. If you ever are in need of my help, simply call for me and I shall come. I know that you shall do the same, friend. Mewtwo, Ash whispered, his emotions filled with regret, shame, and worry. Giovanni slammed his hands onto his desk, cracking the wood. What do you mean Silver's escaped? He demanded. Somebody left his cage door open and he escaped the building, the grunt babbled, backing towards the door. Now wait just 1 minute, Giovanni roared. Why was his cage door open? Who opened it? How did something so big escape without any alarms being raised? The grunt's face blanked for a moment, and then he let out a little laugh of relief. A mistake. Giovanni strode around his desk and grabbed the grunt by the throat, lifting him into the air. Now, he said in a deceptively calm voice, I want you to explain this to me like we're not faced with a potentially critical situation. Wrong, Silver, the grunt gurgled, slowly beginning to turn blue. Hostage escaped. Furo helped. Giovanni released the gasping grunt, unnervingly calm again. You mean the prisoner, he said with a slight smile. Send out grunts, 6 groups of 4. Have them search the perimeter and report back every 90 minutes. Use the Zubat and Golbat to search the trees with their supersonic. Put the stolen Pokeballs under lockdown. We don't need them retrieving his Salamence. Place teams of 3 at every entrance and exit, and double the security for Namba's lab in the legendary room. Sir! The grunt saluted, running out of the room. Impressive, Jay drawled.
You strangle the man and he obeys you without question. That is some impressive loyalty. Are you still here? Giovanni demanded. I hired you to hunt, not to offer advice. Get after those Pokemon now! Jay looked at him impassively, and then walked towards the window. She stopped at the large pane of glass, and then turned to face the leader of Team Rocket. Salamence Dragonclaw, she said calmly, pointing a Pokeball behind her. The massive dragon type materialized and shattered the window with one fierce slash. It swooped outside and Jay followed, jumping lightly onto its back. Silver isn't the only one with a Salamence, she said coldly to Giovanni. I suggest you keep that in mind. You don't want me as your enemy. Nor I you, he whispered softly as she swooped out of sight, fingering the precious trinket in his suit pocket. May carries an evil presence? That's scary! Also, I'm a little bit hungry. I'm gonna have a Snickers. Because I'm not me when I'm hungry. Hungry? Grab a Snickers. Ah. Better? Better. All right. Now then. Now then. But yeah, May has an evil presence about her. What could this be? Perhaps we shall find out in Chapter 26, Defeat. It soared freely through the air. Its long, perfectly streamlined form allowed it to move at speeds that made it almost invisible to humans. As it moved through the skies, it briefly contemplated its past on the island. The memories of the burning cold that had encased it for years upon years still hovered in its mind. Even now, the effects of its long trip to the planet were felt on its body. No matter how many hot lands it traveled to, it never truly felt warm. But still, at least now it was free to roam the globe, meeting as many new Pokemon as it possibly could. It flew through the sky with unrivaled confidence, outstripping the Whale Lord in the water, the Rapidash on the land, and even the Pidgeot that sheared the air. Reveling in its freedom, the Deoxys let loose a foghorn and blast, and swooped down towards a small valley in the midst of a mountain range, feeling a hunger in its belly. A sudden confusion ran through its body. Drawn unexpectedly to the right, it bypassed the valley and headed for a tall waterfall in the distance. Lances of pain suddenly shot through it as it drew closer, but the Pokemon was unable to resist the attraction of the waterfall. Blackness covered its vision, and the Deoxys dropped swiftly to the ground, losing control of its speed and direction. Desperately trying to shield itself from the unexpected pain that had overcome it, the Pokemon morphed into its secure defense form, but the pain was unavoidable. It crashed heavily to the ground. It heard hurried footsteps approach, the creature snapping branches without care as it approached. The Deoxys attempted to stand and escape, but it swooned as the pain hit once again. It fell to the ground, completely disoriented. The footsteps halted, and reaching out with its psychic nature, the Deoxys realized that the creature was standing only a few feet ago. Help me, I am in terrible pain, the Deoxys tried to say, but only an unintelligible stream of alien language poured from its mouth. Deoxys, defense form, it heard a voice say, although it could not understand the human language. Do we have one yet? Another asked. No, the first replied. This is our first Deoxys. You radio to base, I'll get it with the Dark Ball. Rocket HQ, we've located a distressed Deoxys in its defense form, the second voice said. Capturing is underway, and the Pokemon will be relocated to base immediately. There was a burst of static, but the Deoxys heard neither HQ's response nor the cry of triumph as the Dark Ball was thrown. It heard only the mad thoughts that began to swirl through its head as pain and confusion took over its world.
Professor Namba grumbled sourly as he climbed the elegant spiral staircase that led to Giovanni's office. A very frightened Cassidy and Butch followed, seemingly shrunken and diminished. No semblance of life existed in their washed faces. They had failed in their mission. They were as good as dead. Namba glared back at them, his cruel face showing no sign of pity. I hope you're satisfied, he growled, stepping in front of an imposing set of double doors. Since I have to report at the same time as you, I'll be shouted at too, all because of your failure. Cassidy and Butch looked at each other incredulously. Did this man care more about whether he was shouted at than 2 lives? Giving them each one last sour glance, Namba turned and knocked lightly on the doors. Enter, Giovanni's cold voice said. Sir, you wanted to see me? Namba asked, pushing open the doors and striding into the room quickly, Cassidy and Butch slinking through before they closed. Ah, Professor Namba! Yes, I wanted to clear up a couple of things regarding your research and your schedule, Giovanni said, stroking his Persian delicately. First off, you successfully mutated the Pokérus to create the Purporus, correct? A permanent Pokemon virus? Yes, I did, Namba answered, slightly confused. And you injected it into a test Raticate, where the Pokébus effects were permanent? Yes, the Raticate continued to be infected after 24 hours, and all the Pokérus's effects maintained, including its contagiousness. The specimen also responded to all commands given by its trainer, so we concluded a 100 loyalty rate, which sets it apart from the Pokérus. Very good, Giovanni said with a slight smile. Now, I have one last question to ask. Once a Pokemon has been infected with Pokérus, it can never catch the disease again. Can a Pokemon that has recovered from Pokérus be infected with the Purporus? From our experiments so far, yes, Namba answered, puzzled. After the test with the Raticate, we tried it with the Rayquaza that Attila and Hun captured. As you know, it was suffering from Pokérus when it went on that rampage that was caught on TV. The Rayquaza showed all of the same signs that the Raticate did. You're gonna pass head to bed now. Night, Mochi. It was nice to see you again. Yeah, it's nice to see you again too, Dragon. I hope you sleep well. Thank you again for the raid. And please sleep well. You deserve it. You deserve it, King. Giovanni stopped stroking his Persian and stood, beckoning Namba forward. Earlier today, 2 of our grunts radioed in to say they had seen a Deoxys fall from the sky. They located the Pokemon and caught it with a Dark Ball. The Pokemon was headed in this direction when it crashed, and it was suffering from the Purporus. How could they tell? How is it possible? Namba demanded. They could tell from its reactions, Giovanni said. Both are part of your lab team, and just happened to be walking through the forest at the time. They were lucky enough to see it crash. As for how it became infected, I had hoped that you would be able to tell me. I know of no way for the disease to spread, Namba said, gritting his teeth. I do not know how it can be caught without direct physical contact. That numbskull Oak does, but I have never been able to steal that part of his research data. The Purporus has never left the lab, and the Deoxys has never been in the lab. There must be some sort of connection between the Deoxys and Rayquaza, but I do not know what it is! Investigate it, Namba, Giovanni ordered. You have both specimens. Do whatever it takes short of a potentially deadly surgery to figure it out. The Deoxys was headed directly towards us. If this connection can be discovered, we may not need Hunter J to capture them for us. We can attack them ourselves. I will examine them both, Namba agreed. If I may ask, what form is the Deoxys in? He asked. It's trying to shield itself from the virus in defense form, Giovanni replied. So we still need 3 more specimens for our experiment, Namba mused, bowing and walking out of the room. Giovanni sat down with a smile, one hand resting unconsciously on an ancient tome that lay on his desk. His gaze roamed around the room, freezing on Cassidy and Butch as he saw them still standing there nervously. Can I help you? He asked. Butch swallowed before answering. Sir, you wanted to see us? He said. Cassidy and Butch? Giovanni asked. They both nodded. Ah, I seem to remember telling you both that if you failed, you would be killed. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Cassidy whispered almost inaudibly, her red lips barely moving. Where are they? Giovanni asked, spreading his arms. I don't see them here. Why is that? Because we failed in our mission, sir, Butch answered. Giovanni nodded approvingly and leaned forwards. You're not trying to excuse what you did. Good.
Let's discuss your fate. May glared across the contest field at a smirking Harley. She only had 4 ribbons and needed this one to enter into the Johto Grand Festival. This is the final contest before the festival at Mount Silver, and it was a double battle, something May had never truly been comfortable with. To make matters worse, the moment he had learned that she needed this ribbon to qualify, Harley, in his typical nasty fashion, had entered it, even though he already had his 5 ribbons. She gritted her teeth and stepped forwards as she was announced. She knew that somewhere in the audience Drew was watching, and at the thought of his name, her heart fluttered. I won't lose, she whispered to herself. Harley gave her a cheerful little wave as he, too, was announced by the special guest MC, Owen's Vivian. Get ready, he said with a wink. I'm going to blow you away. In your dreams, Harley, May shot back as the clock started. Blaziken! Ledian! Take the stage! Let's go, Octillery, Macargo. It's time to shine! Harley called, throwing forward his own 2 Pokeballs. The 4 Pokemon materialized simultaneously on the field, each one quickly trying to get comfortable with the layout. Blaziken, Fire Spin! Ledian, Silver Wind! May shouted. A powerful flaming vortex left Blaziken's maw, and its speed was quickly increased by the Silver Wind that rammed it from behind. Too easy! Harley snorted. Macargo, stop that fire spin with your lava plume! Artillery, hit Blaziken with a ring out! A solid stream of fire was aimed at the fire spin by Macargo, halting the attack completely. The 2 flames fused and exploded, and through the smoke clouds, Artillery charged forwards, taking both Blaziken and Ledian by surprise as it materialized completely unexpectedly. It leapt into the air and wrapped its tentacles tightly around Blaziken's throat, spinning around the tall fire type in a perfect U-turn before releasing its grip and vanishing back into the slowly clearing smoke. Blaziken dropped to its knees, one clawed hand painfully massaging its damaged throat. May looked up at the score clock in disbelief, seeing her points drop first from Macargo's deflection, and again from Octillery's ring out. Ledian, use Hidden Power on Octillery, and Blaziken, you use Ember on Macargo, she shouted. Octillery, use Octazooka and Macargo. Use Octazooka and Macargo, counter Ember with your own, Harley ordered. Ledian whirled its wings at high speed, forming several green spheres that then flung at Octillery. The water type retaliated by shooting several black pellets from its mouth, deflecting the grass type Hidden Power back at Blaziken on Ricochet. May's strategy starter, still on its knees, unleashed a barrage of red cinders at Harley's Macargo, but the attack fizzled out before the counterattack even hit. Blaziken was slammed head-on, first by Macargo's Ember, and then by the deflected Hidden Power. Blaziken! May screamed, beginning to realize that Octillery's earlier ring-out had actually done some serious damage to Blaziken, and was preventing it from being able to use any fire attacks effectively. That was a good move, she realized. Now I'll have to fight in close, but that won't work well for Ledian. It's forcing me to use 2 different attack methods. I still got some moves in store for him. Blaziken, Sky Uppercut on Macargo, she shouted, and her starter managed to climb to its knees, although it ran more slowly than usual and breathed harshly. Reflect, Harley said with a smirk, and a brilliantly shining barrier was conjured in front of his fire type. Blaziken, both fists glowing, smashed directly into the defensive barrier. It bent under the impact, but rebounded. Blaziken was thrown backwards, taking on the damage from the Sky Uppercut itself. Now use Rock Tomb, Harley ordered, and his Macargo reared up before slamming itself into the ground, causing a massive pillar of rock to unfold May's Pokemon. The powerful fire type struggled, but it was completely trapped and unable to move. Octillery, Water Gun on Blaziken, Harley commanded. Ledian, block that with Aerial Ace! May shouted desperately. Knock Ledian away with Yawn, Macargo! Octillery shot a powerful burst of water at the helpless Blaziken. Ledian swooped down, streams of air plying around its speeding form as it smashed directly into the attack, deflecting the damage away from Blaziken. Macargo yawned powerfully, and as a massive bubble floated gently towards Ledian, it never saw the attack through the gush of water, and it fell to the ground, sound asleep. With no obstacle in the way, the water gun regained its course, smashing straight into the Rock Tomb and Blaziken. It shuddered as the attack sapped its strength.
No, let's finish this up, Harley said with a grin. Macargo, use overheat! Blaziken, I know you're hurt and your fire attacks aren't working, but I know that you still have strength left, and I believe in you. Brick break, and then overheat! Blaziken's eyes glowed fiercely as its body was enveloped in a shining red aura. With a massive effort, it smashed both arms against the sides of the rock tomb, breaking free from the attack before jumping high into the air to avoid the Macargo's attack. It aimed and unleashed a sizzling barrage of intense flames that shone far too brightly for anyone to look at. The attack smashed through the reflect with ease, destroying it, and hit Macargo point blank. 3 red X's appeared on the judge's scorecard, and Harley's remaining points were halved. He gritted his teeth angrily. Now he and May were almost even. No matter, Harley muttered as he recalled his exhausted Macargo. Octillery has the type advantage, and Ledian's still sleeping. Octillery, use Fire Blast on Ledian! Ledian, wake up! May pleaded with their sleeping bug type as the powerful fire attack bore down on it. Ledian breathed gently, still asleep on the battlefield. Blaziken, Skybird caught that fire blast now! She shouted. Blaziken charged forwards, fist glowing again. It swung powerfully at the center of the attack, smashing straight through. Ledian awoke just in time to see the 2 attacks collide and explode. The force drove Ledian backwards into the wall, where it collapsed. Blaziken was also thrown backwards, although it was able to stop short of the wall. May and Blaziken both glared at the smoke, trying to see Octillery. It slowly became visible, dancing gently inside of a protect. It hadn't been damaged from the explosion at all. No way, May whispered. Wait. Blaziken groaned, all the battle damage finally catching up. The red aura faded, and it slumped to the ground, completely immobile. Blaziken, stand up! And Blaziken is unable to battle, Vivian announced. That means the winner is Harley! We'll be awarding him momentarily with his incredible 6th ribbon! Folks, this more than qualifies him for the Grand Festival, which will... Octillery learns Fire Blast? Actually, let's see here. Learn set, probably my TM? Yes! But only by TM and Gen 8? And by TR and Gen... Only by TR and Gen... like... Okay, well, by TR and Gen 8. And I guess TM and, like, BDSP. But bear in mind, this is supposed to take place during Gen 4. So, like... So, yeah. I'm trying to look up on Bulbapedia here. I only see stuff for, like, Gen 8 and Gen 9. Well, actually, no, mostly just Gen 8. Oh, yeah, I guess it's because Octillery isn't in Gen 9, but still. Wonder why I don't see anything for Gen 4, though. You can still buy the reasoning. Tanks do blast fire. They do blast fire. Also, hi, Hex. How are you doing? How are you doing? Hi. Just doing some research to make sure, just to check to see if Octillery can use Fire Blast. And Bulbapedia is not giving me any info about Gen 4 for some reason, which is where the story is supposed to take place. Well, I guess kind of. Well, it's supposed to be like a few years after Gen 4, but this was like before like Black 2 and White, like before Black and White even came out, or like before they were even a concept. So like this came out even before Super Smash Bros. Brawl was a thing, or like before even it came out. So you know, it was still we were very much still like in the middle of Gen 4. You're still seeing it in the Gen 4 learn set? Okay, sounds good. Yeah, for some reason, I don't see where it is in Bulbapedia for some reason. I don't see any, like, options for, like, Gen 4 for some reason. Do I want a website that has every Gen moveset? Well, I mean, that kind of would be nice, probably. I mean, I just use Bulbapedia for that sort of stuff, but for some reason, they don't show it! So much for being, like, a, you know, an exhaustive source of information. Data Dex Supremacy? Okay, well, I'm gonna be remembering that name. Thank you, Pika. I'm gonna remember that. Oh yeah, so yeah, apparently Octillery can learn Fire Blast. So yeah, Harley is not breaking the rules. Or breaking the laws of Pokemon physics. Whatever those are. May withdrew both Ledian and Blaziken, her eyes downcast. Only one thought reverberated through her mind. I lost. I didn't qualify. It's over. She began to trudge back to the dressing rooms, pausing to look back only briefly. Harley, holding his new ribbon, caught her eye and winked. Better luck next time, hun. Better luck next year, hun, he mouthed. No problem. Use reviews for any Pokemon-related info. Gotcha. I mean, I've generally used Bolt Wikipedia for, like, a bunch of different stuff, and it's usually been pretty, you know, like... It's been, you know, pretty thorough with a lot of its stuff so far. But, I don't know. For some reason, I guess they just replaced it. Or maybe there's just an option that switches it to, like, Gen 4 that I just didn't notice it because I didn't do Control F. But, you know. Cerebi is also a good one. Yeah, I mean, I've used Cerebi a little bit before, too, but, like... I don't know. Cerebi is a little... dated. I mean, I guess maybe not with, like, information. Or maybe not with information, but, you know, it's kind of antiquated in its design, kind of. Which I know is not a very good reason for me to not use it. But, you know. Anyway. Drew leaned against the doorframe, waiting for May at the entrance to the dressing rooms. He was the only person there, everyone else having left to congratulate Harley on the field. He watched as May's figure approach slowly out of the dim hallway, moving slowly and without any real sense of direction. She stopped in front of him and looked up from the door, her red-rimmed eyes meeting his. I've never lost so badly to him before, she whispered, tears still streaming down her cheeks. It's all over. I didn't qualify. You know why you lost, don't you? Drew said. May shook her head wordlessly. Drew sighed, looking away for a moment as he tried to think how to best word how she had lost her disastrous battle. You went into that contest to win a ribbon. There was a lot of pressure because it was your last chance to qualify for the Grand Festival this year. But then you found out that Harley was entering too, just to try and stop you from qualifying. So what did you do? You played right into his hands. You went into the appeals trying to win a ribbon, but you went into the finals trying to beat Harley. Started off in the right way by combining Fire Spin and Silver Wind, but then Harley blocked both attacks perfectly and countered with that ring out. When that happened, you stopped trying to win a ribbon. All that you wanted was revenge for that surprise attack. He hurt Blaziken! May protested. He could barely breathe. Of course I wanted to get him back for that. In a contest battle, you don't get revenge by trying to overpower the opponent, Drew shouted. You get revenge by beating them tactically. Harley didn't break any rules, and you were lucky that Blaziken wasn't out in that first attack. He paused a moment, striving to calm down. You didn't battle with your head, he said more gently. You battled in desperation, and that stopped you from seeing Harley's game plan. He focused all of his attacks on your Blaziken because he knows that that's your strongest Pokemon, and Ledian is still inexperienced. He double-teamed Blaziken because then it would have been easy to take down Ledian. Why do you think he deflected hidden power at Blaziken? Why do you think he trapped Blaziken in a rock tomb and then ordered both of his Pokemon to concentrate their attacks at it? I didn't realize that, May whispered softly, her eyes staring in recollection of the battle. Of course you didn't, Drew said, slightly exasperated. You battled it like it was a regular trainer battle, forgetting that you lose points if your attacks miss or are blocked. You tried to take him down using pure power, not strategy. He chuckled humorlessly. It's all the fault of Ash and Brock, he said. Maybe they're your friends, but the last thing a coordinator needs to associate with a regular trainer. The battle styles are just too different. You got influenced by them too much. You can make your attacks flashy during appeals, but you've never learned how to do that in the battle rounds. Oh, you use it because your school computer doesn't have it blocked? Nice. Hey. Wait, they have Bulbapedia blocked? Wow. Man, fascists, man. I'm trying to control the flow of information. You're going insane right now. You're in a VC with Hex and Peak and hearing like 3 Mochis all at the same time. 3 Mochis! There are dozens of us! Cosmetica, literally dozens of us! So how are you doing, Cosmetica? Ash and Brock are my friends, I said quietly, her face hardening. I learned more from them about battling recent Pokemon than I ever could have on my own. I owe everything that I've done for them. Relax, Drew said, holding up both hands. I wasn't putting them down, I was just saying that you've been influenced by their battle styles so much that it makes it difficult for you to battle in a contest style. It's not a bad thing because it throws out people you've never battled before. But when it comes down to facing somebody who's seen the way you battled countless times, like Harley, it just makes it easy to take away your points. May sighed. You're right, she said, collapsing in despair again. I've done everything I wanted to avoid by coming to Johto. Drew sighed as he watched her pretty face contort with sadness. He hadn't planned on asking her like this, but... May, he said. I have something really important to say, and I'm not quite sure how to say it. What is it? She asked. It's... well... Feeling suddenly awkward, he reached for the back of his belt, drawing out a beautiful rose. We've traveled it for a long time and been rivals even longer, he said. It took me a long time to realize it, but I've gotten feelings for you. Yeah, this is a great time to say this. Like, don't you hear the music? Don't you hear the sad-sounding music, Drew? I don't think this is the right time for that. Anyway. Feelings? May whispered, her heart suddenly pounding. Yes, Drew said, his confidence surging when she didn't draw away. May, I love you. And I want you by my side. I want to travel around the world with you, going to new places and meeting all sorts of people in Pokemon. He continued talking, but May had stopped listening, her mind wandering. She remembered all the times when Drew had been there for her, encouraging her to beautify, warning her about Harley's deceitful ways. In the shadows of her mind, there was a slight stirring of guilt for a trainer whom she had traveled with and grown close to. But when Drew clasped her hands between his, it vanished. May, will you be my girlfriend? He asked. She thought for a moment, her eyes searching his carefully. Yes, she answered, the look of misery from her loss fading into a small smile. Definitely. Drew grinned widely and embraced her tightly. His heart jittered briefly when he felt her chest squashed against his, but with a massive effort he forced himself not to think about the sensation. Thank you, May, he found himself saying. But now I have some good news for you. Isn't a new boyfriend good news? She asked with a slight laugh. Yeah, but this balances out losing to Harley, Drew said. There's actually one more contest left. It's in Blackthorn City in 2 weeks. May stiffened and stepped back from him. I thought you said this was the last contest of the year, she said quietly. Drew shrugged. I lied, he said simply.
Okay, I believe you.
Why? She asked, hurt evident in her face. Because, he said, Soledad is entering the Blackthorn contest, and I figured that you could do without the pressure of having to beat her to enter the Grand Festival. Now, come on, let's get out of here. You can ride Flygon to Blackthorn City and be there with lots of time to spare for practice. He stepped forwards, gave her a quick kiss on the lips, and then grabbed her by the hand before dragging her towards the building's exit. She didn't resist, not completely aware of what was happening as she tried to sort through the whirlwind of emotions that had assailed her in the last few minutes. Hunter J stared disdainfully at the green-haired teenager that lay in her way, fast asleep on the path. She snorted slightly and stepped forwards, bending down next to him. She quickly grabbed a Pokeball from his belt, giving it a quick sniff. Sensing the aroma of Roselia, she grimaced and dropped the ball back next to the sleeper. She repeated her motions, leaving the second ball when she scented Masquerain and pocketing the third when she realized it was an Absol. This is too easy, she muttered, reaching for the last ball on his belt. I don't even use my Drapion or my Capturer for this. She froze suddenly when she felt the green-haired teenager move under her touch. Her eyes wandered to his face and met his narrowed gaze. Hunter J definitely had, wow, Patrick sure is a heavy sleeper. Sort of energy from this. And then Drew's like,
Oh, who goes there? It's the Hamburglar!
anyway. And what exactly are you doing? Drew asked icily. Jake grinned at him. Stealing your Pokemon? What does it look like? She retorted. Drew turned quickly, drawing back both his legs and arms before shooting them straight into Jake's chest. Jake flew backwards, landing hard on the ground. Why you? She growled, climbing swiftly to her feet. Salamence, let's go! Drew grinned as her massive dragon type appeared. Finally, a real opponent, he said. Flygon, I choose you! The two Pokemon hovered in midair, sizing each other up as their trainers did likewise. Salamence, Dragon Breath! Jay shouted. Flygon, counter with Flamethrower! Drew ordered. Green flames collided with red as the two attacks met and exploded in midair. Even, Jay growled, contemplating what attack to use next. She glared at Drew, hatred in her eyes when she saw that the stolen Pokeball was resting at his feet. He noted her gaze and smiled, retrieving it and pocketing the Pokemon. Your move, he said. And I thought that Mewtwo had mellowed out after Johto, Brock muttered, sitting in the Vermilion City Pokemon Center's bedroom that he and Ash had rented. I mean, at least his attitude to us is a little warmer after you helped to save him, but now it seems that he's even colder than he was on New Island. I don't get what could have changed. All those years alone without any contact with other people or Pokemon, I guess, Ash said, shrugging. I'm guessing that he kept moving around every couple of days to stay undetected. That doesn't exactly give him a lot of time to make friends or keep those friends. Mewtwo still cares. All that isolation has just made his personality colder. I guess so, Brock sighed. At least trust us enough to not remove our memories of New Island again. Have you been able to get in touch with Forrest yet? Ash asked, changing the subject. Yeah, he's coming over after he's finished training with Lieutenant Surge. You know, he's still trying to teach his Raichu those speed attacks you beat him with. I'm glad that Forrest agreed to help him out with that, Brock answered. He glanced towards the door. How's May doing? She's still pretty shaking up from meeting Mewtwo. Nurse Joy won't let me in to see her, but at least she keeps on giving me updates. I don't understand why she hasn't been taken to a hospital, Brock said, frowning. I mean, she just collapsed when Mewtwo vanished, and she hasn't been properly awake since. Ash grimaced. You know how the hospitals work these days, he said. There isn't a broken bone or infection, they just get a Pokemon to use Heal Bell or Refresh. I just want to know why she collapsed. Do you think it has anything to do with that dark presence Mewtwo mentioned? Brock asked. We've both seen dark presences before, Brock, Ash said, shaking his head. Remember when I was possessed by the King of Pokelantis? I don't know what Mewtwo was talking about, but May definitely doesn't have any dark presence. I think it was something that Mewtwo did to her. I can't shake the feeling that I've seen her symptoms before. Same here, Brock muttered. I wonder why. I wonder too, Ash said softly, staring out of the window at the bright sun. Nurse Joy watched May, worry on her face. Underneath the heavy blanket, she continued to shiver, her face pale and sweaty. The thermometer beeped, and Nurse Joy quickly took it from May's mouth. Her eyes widened when she saw that it was at 105 degrees Fahrenheit. You're burning up, she said softly, wetting a cloth and placing it on her forehead. May moaned at the contact, shifting slightly under the blanket. I keep calling the hospitals, but no matter what I tell them, they keep saying they won't accept you. I don't know what else I can do. I'm trying to heal Pokemon, not people. She sighed and sat down in a chair placed close to the head of the bed, watching May carefully. I've tried everything I know. Refresh, soft-boiled, even an Alakazam's Recover. Nothing has worked, and if the fever doesn't break soon... She bent her head, tears leaking to the ground. She had never felt so helpless before. All I can do is try to make you as comfortable as possible if worst comes to worst. At the far side of the room, completely escaping the notice of the distraught Nurse Joy, something in May's discarded travel pack began to glow. Yeah, so May's not doing too hot right now. She's not doing too hot. That doesn't seem very good. That doesn't seem very good at all. What could this mean? Well, chapter 27, disease. Maybe we'll find out here. Ray stood stiffly in the trainer's box, her hand clenched so tightly that even her short fingernails drew blood. Her jaw worked vigorously as she tried to figure a way out of the situation. Rattata kept dodging the Venomoth's attacks, but it kept moving more and more slowly. Across the battlefield, Koga watched her impassively. Venomoth, enough, he said abruptly. The Pokemon ceased its attack and turned to its trainer expectantly. Let's go, he said, motioning towards the trick wall. Hey, wait a minute! We didn't finish our battle! Ray protested. Koga stopped, but did not bother to face her. This is a 4-on-4 battle. You are on your third Pokemon, and my first has not even been touched by any of your attacks. Now you're not even issuing any attacks. Your skills don't measure up to the standards of this Pokemon gym. Our battle is over. You can't do that! Ray shouted. How can the battle be over? I haven't even won or lost! It isn't victory that gives a person the right to a badge, Koga stated. A gym leader has the right to refuse to issue a badge if the victor's skills are not up to a certain standard. A win is just that, a win. The challenger has to demonstrate their abilities to be worthy of a badge. You have only demonstrated incompetence. That's not true! Ray shouted, beginning to break down into tears. I've won 5 badges! I hope that count does not include the Cascade badge, Koga said icily. A gym badge demonstrates the skill of the bearer. There is no skill in just having the badge given away. It said all our Pokemon were being treated at the Pokemon Center. Yet they were able to use those same Pokemon in a performance only a few hours later. Koga turned and looked at the tear-stained face of the girl. You are not ready to face me, he said softly. Go away, train hard, and try again another time. He sighed and shook his head. I expected better from a pallet trainer, he murmured, walking through the trick wall. Ray stood, staring at the wall. Rattata, return, she whispered, as she turned and slowly trudged out of the gym. Her head bowed in sadness. She looked back at the fuchsia gym despondently, at the 4 walls that had for so long held her dreams of the future. Now they held only despair. She choked back a sob and ran into the nearby fuchsia forest, trying to put as much distance between her and Koga as possible. Branches toward her face, slapping her cheeks with harsh, stinging blows as she pushed her way through them. She breathed harshly through her mouth, her muscles screaming at her to stop and her brain ignoring them. At last, she tripped. Her feet caught underneath a large root that lay hidden in her path. Halted at last, she finally gave in to her emotions, her chest heaving spasmodically. She lay there for a long time, accompanied only by the fat tears that dripped slowly onto the bracken below. The glow from May's pack vanished, completely unnoticed by the distraught Nurse Joy. Her hands trembled as the thermometer beeped, indicating that May's body temperature had gone up yet another degree. The sick trainer from Hoenn moaned again, her body shuddering more and more uncontrollably. A small amount of froth began to collect at her mouth, which Nurse Joy tried to wipe away. A soft cloth touched her lips. May suddenly jerked forwards, her jaw snapping shut at the place where Nurse Joy's wrist had been only moments before. She yelped in surprise and jumped backwards. What was that for? She yelled. May simply moaned and collapsed backwards again, shivering and unconscious. Nurse Joy sighed and, keeping a wary eye on May's movements, straightened the blankets. The thermometer beeped again, and Nurse Joy groaned. Her temperature was now 107 degrees, and quickly reaching the body's mortal limit. There's nothing I can do, she whispered. The fever just won't go down. I have to let your friends know what's happening. They need to be here to say goodbye. Tears began to prickle in her eyes. She wiped them away quickly. She stood and went to the door, taking one last look at the dying girl in front of her. She frowned as she saw, for the first time, a lump on May's chest. She went back to the bed quickly, lifting up May's sickbay gown to see what it was. Her eyes widened when she saw that a lumpy green pustule had formed on one of May's breasts. She carefully reached out and touched it lightly with one finger. May let out a high-pitched scream and began thrashing on the bed. Nurse Joy drew back her finger quickly with a squeal of surprised pain. She instinctively wanted to place the finger in her mouth, but common sense warned her against it. She examined her finger and was surprised to see that it had been burned. As the thermometer beeped again, May collapsed once more, drenched in soaking sheets of sweat. Nurse Joy leant in cautiously for a closer look at the throbbing pustule on her chest. What on earth could that be? She murmured. She was so engrossed in her examination that she never saw May's pack begin to move. Slowly, quietly, the zipper began to open. Ash glared out the window, his gaze burning across the landscape. Behind him, Brock and Forrest chatted quietly, both realizing that Ash, through his worry for May, had turned into a raw nerve. The sun was slowly crawling down towards the horizon. As the shadows lengthened, Ash's eyes began to burn more and more fiercely. "I know that I've seen it before," he muttered. "But what? And where?" She just collapsed and began to tremble. Brock looked over at his younger brother and nodded. He walked over to Ash and laid a hand on his shoulder. As he had expected, the trainer jumped. "Come on, Ash, you need to rest. Your eyes are exhausted and you must be hungry," Brock said. Ash shook his head. "Do you think I could eat or sleep knowing how sick May is?" he asked. "It's a shock from you two, Ash," Brock said. "I'm sure of it." "Well, I'm not," Ash said, scowling. "I know that I've seen this before, and I know it's a lot more serious than shock or cold or..." He trailed off, his jaw slowly opening. Brock and Forrest looked at each other in concern, but Ash didn't notice. His thoughts whirled as he thought again of May's symptoms and connected them inexplicably with the images of a deranged Rayquaza firing a hyperbeam towards a safeguarded Latias. "It can't be!" he breathed, jumping to his feet in anguish. "Can't be what?" Forrest asked. Ash ignored the question and began to pace instead. "It's impossible. But it's the only thing that fits. I have to go and check." He looked up, his eyes clear and focused. "Forrest," he said, turning to the Pewter City gym leader, "you get Dawn and Ray and keep them away from the emergency room." "Why?" he asked, completely perplexed. "Just do it!" Ash shouted, running out the door. Forrest looked at his older brother, sighed, and began to follow Ash. "I'll go after him," he said. "You go tell the girls." With another sigh, Brock left the room and followed after Ash. The trainer from Pallet ran on through the Pokemon Center, oblivious that Brock and Pikachu were hot on his heels. Only one thought was on his mind as he hurtled towards the emergency room, towards the dying girl he had loved. "I know what's wrong. I know what's wrong. I can save her." Oh, but what could be wrong? Place your bets, everyone. Show of hands. Who thinks they know what it is? Show of hands. Show of hands. Raise your hands if you have an answer. Sees Hermione in the background, raising her hand.
No one? How disappointing.
All right. Chapter 28. Farewell. Max stood at the summit of one of the foothills of Mount Silver. He stood almost perfectly still, his only movement the flickering of his eyes as he scanned the sky. A look of anxiety creased his face as the day dragged on, and the brilliant blue of the sky began to fade to a dusty blue.
He was waiting for an old friend, a friend that was already several hours late. It can't be lost, he muttered, biting his lip in worry. This is where we met last time, and its internal compass never lets it forget where it places. His hand loosely fingered the 5 Pokeballs that lay attached to his belt. The usual 6 now safely back at Professor Birch's lab, courtesy of the nearest Pokemon Center. Claydol, I need you, he called, grabbing one of the Pokeballs and tossing it high into the air. Yen, it hummed, revolving slowly in the air as it descended to within a few inches of the ground. Deoxys is late. We were supposed to meet here at noon, but the sun is setting now. I need you to use your psychic to try and see if there are any Pokemon in the sky nearby that I can't see. Can you do that for me? Yen. His Claydol nodded, closing its multiple eyes. Max watched, fascinated, as the air around his Pokemon began to glow a bright blue. Humming, the Claydol began to spin, slowly at first, but picking up more and more speed with each revolution. It began to levitate higher off the ground, glowing tendrils from the psychic spurting off in all directions as the Pokemon spun at a rapid pace. And then the revolutions began to slow. The blue aura dissipated, and his Claydol dropped back to Earth. Anything? Max asked anxiously. Yen, Claydol nodded, pointing an arm and slowly turning in the direction of Mount Silver. Max looked with narrowed eyes towards the mountain. A small dark shape slowly became discernible as it appeared from behind one of Mount Silver's rocky slopes. Max breathed a sigh of relief, but the sigh was quickly cut short when a second shape appeared from behind it. A faint roar came to his ears, and he cringed unwillingly from its sound. The 2 shapes circled around each other, passing in front of the dying sun. He squinted his eyes and was able to make out the sight of 2 tiny pricks of light, one red and the other green, colliding with each other. What on earth is that? He muttered. Drew grinned, holding on tightly to his Flygon with his knees. It rolled in mid-air to avoid a Dragon Breath from Jay's Salamence, and then flipped over backwards to dodge a powerful Dragon Claw. Jay cursed inwardly as the larger but more maneuverable Flygon avoided every attack thrown its way. Pull back and use Dragon Breath, she yelled, leaning along her Salamence's neck to make sure it heard her. Climb and counter it with a flamethrower, Drew shouted. He gripped more tightly as his Flygon soared upwards, twisted around, and shot straight back downwards, intense flames spewing from its mouth. Jay's Salamence let out a blood-curdling roar that halted Flygon in its tracks. It charged up towards its opponent, scarcely noticing the force of the flamethrower as it charged through the heart of the attack. Drew gaped in surprise as the Dragon-type burst out of the flamethrower, dispelling the flames entirely. At full speed, it smashed itself into the lower jaw of Drew's Flygon, sending it reeling backwards in pain. Stunned and disoriented, the Flygon didn't realize when Jay's Salamence got above it. A devastating Dragon Claw crashed down on top of Flygon's head, causing it to let out a shriek of pain. The Salamence quickly followed up by spinning, and mercilessly smashed its thick tail against Flygon's neck, knocking unconscious and flipping the Pokemon upside down. At the sudden, violent twisting apart of the world, Drew lost his grip. With a scream of fear, he plummeted downwards towards the foothills that stretched out far below. May moaned as her temperature rose even higher, now at 109 degrees. Nurse Joy looked at her through her medical equipment frantically, knowing that if it rose just 2 more degrees, May would die. She grabbed the instruments she would need and darted back to May's side. The door to the emergency room smashed open, and Ash, Brock, and Pikachu burst into the room, all 3 panting heavily. Nurse Joy shrieked with fright at the sudden intrusion, dropping her instruments on the floor in the process. Nurse Joy! There's no time for this now, Brock! She screamed, forestalling the love-struck reader. If I don't get this lump on her chest removed, she'll die! Ash stopped cold at the sight. I knew it, he muttered. Knew what?
Joy shouted, stooping to pick up her equipment with fumbling fingers. Ash hesitated a minute, trying to think of how to say what needed to be said. We know that it's impossible for the disease to be transmitted between Pokemon and humans, but Ash thinks that May has somehow been infected with the Pokerus, Brock said baldly. Nurse Joy stared at them both, her mind racing. I have a Pokemon that was infected with the Pokerus before, Ash added. It had the exact same symptoms, and it had the same growth that May does, too. Nurse Joy made a snap decision. Brock, there's a video phone in the corner. I know almost nothing about Pokerus, but there is one person who knows a hell of a lot. Call Professor Oak. His number is... Professor Oak's lab was destroyed, Ash interrupted. He's staying at my mom's house until it's rebuilt. You should try there instead. Got it, Brock nodded, running over to the corner. Nurse Joy turned back to May, a scalpel clenched tightly in her hands. Ash, I need you to hold her steady. I tried to touch the growth before and she attacked me, she said as she lowered the instrument to within an inch of the pustule. Delia, we need to talk to Professor Oak right away. It's an emergency. Is he there? Ash heard Brock say as he strode quickly up to the bed, trying to avoid looking at the growth for reasons of modesty. Nurse Joy took a deep breath, moved the scalpel in close, and dropped it with a shriek of surprise as the thermometer beeped once again. The instrument fell onto the growth, and with a yell of pain, May lunged forwards, her eyes staring madly as her hands closed around Joy's throat. Forrest knocked nervously on what he hoped was Dawn's and Ray's bedroom door. Hearing the chatter within cease abruptly, he had never been very good at when it came to dealing with girls, especially the pretty ones. His training with Lieutenant Surge had been more of a joint deal than anything else. He was going to help Surge with speed attacks, while Surge helped him cope with girls. He hoped that Surge's coaching would pay off now. What is it? He heard a clear voice call, and his knees trembled slightly. This was definitely a girl's room. My name is Forrest. I'm Brock's brother. There was a pause, and then he heard footsteps approach the door. Nervously, he stood up as straight as he could as the door opened. His knees melted away as he found himself staring into two of the most beautiful blue eyes that he'd ever seen. Yes? Dawn asked quizzically. Oh, wonderful, a second voice said from behind Dawn sarcastically. He's as love-struck as his brother. Ray! Dawn shouted, looking back over her shoulder at her roommate, her cheeks turning crimson. She turned back to Forrest, and her eyes softened as she saw how nervous he was. What's the matter, Forrest? Where are Brock and Ash? At the sound of Ash's name, something in Forrest's brain clunked into place. Oh, Ash wanted me to keep you two away from the emergency room because of how bad May is. Dawn stared at him for a moment, and then Ray shoved her way into the doorway. Forrest gasped, almost falling over at the sight of her sparkling emerald eyes and luxurious long brown hair. Well, that was a pretty stupid thing to say, she said sarcastically as she forced her way past Forrest into the hallway. If you tell us not to go somewhere, we're obviously going to anyways. Forrest stared after her, his brain not really working. She has a point, you know, Dawn said kindly as she squeezed past and walked down the hallway too. Forrest watched them both walk towards the emergency room, a sinking feeling in his stomach. I guess Lieutenant Surge still needs to teach me a bit more, he mused, before the reality of what had just happened sank in. Hey, wait! He yelped after them, only to realize they had turned a corner and vanished. I guess I should have tried keeping them away by not mentioning it at all, he muttered, starting off after them. The next few moments were a blur of confusion for Ash. The thermometer beeped, Nurse Joy yelped, and May leapt backwards, trying to strangle her. There was a lot of yelling coming from the direction of Brock from the video phone, and then the breeder ran forwards, trying to pry May's hands away from Nurse Joy's neck. May backhanded him in the gut with one arm, doubling over into the floor with pain. As they reached over May's shoulders with both arms, the door burst open and Dawn, Ray, and Forrest fell into the room, skidding to a halt as they saw what was happening. Dawn screamed at the sight of May strangling the Pokemon nurse, and May recoiled at the sound, letting go of Nurse Joy as she clamped her hands to her ears. At the foot of the video phone, May's pack burst into flames, unobserved by all but one. What's happening? Professor Oak shouted from the video phone, unable to see anything that was happening from the smoke. Ash wrapped his arms tightly against May, trying to prevent her from harming anyone else in her incapacitated state. May let out a high-pitched scream of fright and turned, trying to claw her attacker. Unfocused blue eyes met worried black eyes that were filled with worry, concern, and love. Ash continued to hold on to her protectively, never once blinking or looking away from the coordinator. Slowly, miraculously, she relaxed, her arms snaking around him and turned, and her head gently coming to rest on his chest. As Nurse Joy climbed unsteadily to her feet, Ash held May tightly. He could feel her fever even through his shirt, and tears began to cloud his eyes. The thermometer beeped one final time. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you, YouTube. The barometer beeped one final time, and May's sapphire eyes turned glassy, the last sparkle slowly fading. Her tight grip on Ash turned limp, and her breathing steadily slowed until it halted altogether. Ash, she whispered. 2 tears began to stream down his face as the girl whom he loved moved no more, her light frame resting on his. His body shook and convulsed as he fought back the sadness, staring into 2 sapphire eyes that had always seemed to be full of joy, to be full of life. He slowly lifted off his necklace, half a ribbon dangling from the end. Tenderly, he put it around May's neck before kissing her gently on the forehead. May, he said softly, I'm sorry. That is where we're going to be ending things off here today, y'all. Is what I would say! But we still have more I'm not ending it here. Nuh-uh, nuh-uh, no, nuh-uh. You're not ending it here. Okay, it would be nice if I could there. Now we're not ending it there, y'all. But holy bejeez! Crazy! He's dead! She's dead! She was just a girl! But, you know... This is why disease sucks. You know what I mean? This is why it sucks. Well, we actually do have a little bit more to go, so we're not ending it on that cliffhanger. Me when I'm just a girl, but also dead. Thank you, Pika. I don't know how people have a hard time sleeping. I can do it with my eyes closed. Hey, that's a good one, Orville. I like that. That's a great one. All right, chapter 29, Egg. Or Egg, if y'all watch Proton John.
Boo! You stink!
Oh, you stink. Tracy stretches back, groaning as he felt the stiffness. Still, as he worked his shoulders in an attempt to relieve a knotted muscle, he had to admit that the strain and back pain was definitely worth it. Rebuilding the lab would take time, but it was going much more quickly than any of them had anticipated. We were very lucky, he reflected. The Rayquaza had destroyed most of the lab, but the foundations weren't damaged. That alone had saved them a month's work. Professor Oak had also been very cautious when he had originally built the lab. The basement, where he kept his research and backed up computer data, had been reinforced by 2-inch steel walls during its construction. It meant that months, years of research was safe from harm. It meant that all the decades Professor Oak had put into studying his unpublished data, and that the millions of yen he'd spent on ancient Pokemon artifacts was not a waste. Tracy turned and surveyed the land. In just a few days, they had already finished reconstructing the skeleton in the lab, and they would soon be able to start on the more solid constructions. The extra hands they had to use was a huge bonus. Caroline had returned to Hoenn, but Norman had volunteered to stay and help rebuild. Gary had decided to postpone returning to Sinnoh, and Ray's parents had also volunteered their help. Even Delia was chipping in her own way, of course. Each night, the workers would troop down to the Ketchum residence and be greeted by a massive spread. It was the perfect way to relax and unwind after a long and hard day of work. He had to admit, though, that as welcome as all the unexpected help was, the biggest factor had been Ash's 29 Tauros. Usually they were filled with energy and rampaged around the lab's grounds completely carefree. Now they were filled with energy, and their strength and eagerness to help was the main reason why the skeleton had been erected so quickly. Lots of other Pokemon, including Gary's Blastoise, Nidoking, and Nidoqueen, as well as Norman's Vigoroth and Slacking, had also been a huge help. But there was no doubt that it was because of Ash's Tauros that the first stage of work had been completed so quickly. "Hey!" a voice called out from behind him. Turning, Tracy was surprised to see that only a few feet away, a dark-haired young man stood casually with his hands in his pockets, an expression of polite interest on his face. Wow, he's quiet. How did he manage to get so close without me hearing him, he wondered. "Hey there," he said aloud with a friendly grin to the man. "Come to help with the rebuilding? You're a bit late for today's work. Everybody's just finishing up. Want to join us for supper? We'll be heading down the hill in a minute." "Thank you, but no," the stranger interrupted. "I'm not here to help rebuild. I'm looking for Professor Oak." Tracy frowned. "You do know that we're in the middle of a huge reconstruction, don't you? The professor doesn't really have any time to spare for journalists or to answer any trivial questions." The stranger's eyes gleamed curiously. "I'm well aware that you're in the middle of rebuilding the lab," he said softly. "I'd have to be blind and deaf to not have realized it by now. As for my question," he smiled slightly, and a sudden shiver ran down Tracy's spine. "I can assure you that it is a matter of vital importance." Tracy eyed him. "The professor left for a phone call about a half hour ago," he said. "He's taking it at the Ketchum's house. Go down the hill towards Palatown and turn right. It's the third house on the left. There may be a Mr. Mime sweeping or gardening outside." Without a word, the stranger nodded, turned, and left. Tracy watched him go, apprehension flitting around his gut. Danger hung around this person. He could see it as clearly as Lucario could Aura. He could feel it. Something bad was about to happen. And if it did, the professor was much better equipped to handle the situation than he was. "Kurt!" Professor Oak exclaimed, his eyes racing across the screen. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. What happened to you?" "It was a tech," Kurt answered quietly. "Somebody stormed into my workshop, stole my last apricorn ball, and paralyzed me." "Kurt, you need to see a doctor right away," Oak said, eyeing the injuries on Kurt's face and arms. "It's not important," Kurt said roughly. He fixed the professor with a watering red eye. "Professor! Sam, you wanted the GS ball." Professor Oak went cold. "Oh, did he get it?" he whispered, almost afraid to ask. Kurt hesitated before answering. "No," he said finally, "but he knows that you have it, Sam. I'm sure that he's traveling to Pallet as we speak." Professor Oak paused. "What do you mean he knows that I have it?" he asked. "I thought you still had it." "I gave it to that girl with the Pidgeot like you asked," Kurt answered. "What was her name?" "May. Didn't she give it to you when she arrived in Pallet?" "No," Professor Oak said in a strangled voice. "She arrived the morning of Ash's match, and then, well, with the Rayquaza attack, I'd almost forgotten about it until now." "Then you're both in danger!" Kurt shouted. "He'll get to Pallet and search you out, and when he finds out that you don't have it, he'll start to track her down too." "May is traveling with Ash at the moment. She'll be safe enough with him," Professor Oak said slowly. "And what about you, Sam?" Kurt asked. "This guy is ruthless. Once he found out I didn't have the GS ball anymore, he uses Pokemon to knock me out. He won't be afraid to do the same or worse to you." At this, Oak grinned, and there was no fear in his gaze. I don't like his chances of facing off against me, Gary, and Norman, he said with a hint of steel in his voice. Now tell me, what did he look like and what Pokemon did he have? Immediately after his video call with Kurt, Oak dialed up Professors Elm, Birch, Ivy, Rowan, and Aspen to see if any trainer had recently exchanged their Magnezone for a held Pokemon. After hearing a chorus of no's and gained their assurances that they would contact him straight away if any such exchange was made, he slumped at the table, feeling mentally exhausted. Dinner will be ready in a moment, Professor, Delia whispered as she passed by him, a massive salad in her arms. That'll wake you up a bit. I really hope so, Delia, he sighed, rubbing his eyes. There's just so much going on, I feel as if my mind is about to explode. Oh, it'll sort itself out soon enough, she smiled. Then you'll wonder what there was to be so stressed about. He nodded absent-mindedly as she bustled back off to the kitchen, his mind filled with worry. He was jerked out of his stupor by the sound of the phone ringing. It stopped abruptly on the third ring, and he heard Delia's voice. Oh, hi, Brock. How are you all? Where are you calling from? Delia, we need to talk to Professor Oak right away. It's an emergency. Is he there? Brock asked, ignoring her questions. A sudden flitter of apprehension ran through Oak's body. He stood quickly and made his way to the video phone as Delia turned towards him. What's the problem, Brock? He asked as soon as he reached the monitor. May's ill, Brock said. There's a pustule in her chest, and Nurse Joy needs you to guide her through the operation. We think it might be... Professor Oak stared over Brock's shoulder at the scene playing out in front of him, oblivious to the tail end of Brock's sentence. With an inhuman screech, May lunged from the hospital bed and fastened her hands around Joy's throat. There was a moment of surprised thrashing, somebody off-screen screaming, and then a burst of acrid black smoke drifting upwards, completely obscuring the screen. What's happening? He yelled, but there was no response save for a scream. The rushing noise of the wind blowing past his body stopped. This is it, he thought calmly. I'm dead. I can't hear or see anything. The world is black. It's just me and my thoughts, alone, forever. But then something suddenly tickled his nose. Grimacing in irritation, he tried to brush it away but found his arms were unresponsive. Strange, he thought. Why would my nose itch if I were dead? Drew opened his eyes. The ground hovered in front of him, mere inches from his nose. A stalk of grass was rubbing against it, quivering from a very slight breeze. He squeezed his eyes shut tightly before opening them again. The ground was still there. But why am I floating, he wondered. I fell thousands of feet. Why aren't I dead? That was when he noticed his vision was tinted violet. It's a psychic, he realized. Somebody stopped my fall using psychic. So it's you, he heard a familiar voice say. Then came a snort. I wouldn't have stopped you if I'd known if I'd known who you were. The purple haze in front of his eyes vanished, and he dropped. Grimacing and rubbing his nose, he twisted his neck and saw a person whom he had sincerely hoped he would never have to see again. Max, he said with a curt nod, scrambling to his feet. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw his Flygon held in place, a foot or so above the ground, contained in another psychic. He was still unconscious. He turned his gaze back to Max and immediately recognized the two Pokemon he had called out. Claydol, levitating in slow circles around his trainer, and Gardevoir, her body glowing violet and her eyes closed as she concentrated on keeping Flygon in the air. Think you can let my Flygon go now? Drew asked the younger trainer. Max shook his head, an ugly look on his face. No. Not until you explain to me exactly why you did it. Did what? Drew asked, playing dumb. Max's expression got even uglier. You know exactly what, he hissed from between clenched teeth. You betrayed my sister. You broke her heart and chased her out of Johto. I want to know why, and I want to know now! Drew shook his head scornfully. I don't have to explain myself to you, he said. Wait until you grow some stubble on your chin before you even think of having the audacity to interrogate me. He grabbed Flygon's Pokeball and withdrew his Pokemon, the red beam easily piercing through Gardevoir's psychic. I'm out of here, he sneered, flicking his hair out of his eyes as he turned to walk away. His body then froze, and his mouth opened in a soundless scream as his entire body was assailed by a fierce burning sensation. His vision turned purple again, although this time it was a darker, more menacing shade. Slowly, against his will, his body turned until he's facing Max once more. The young trainer ignored Drew and crouched to the ground, watching at his Gardevoir with an expression of slight interest. She held the coordinator in place. Being a gym leader's son, I'm privy to some information that you would never find in any textbooks or Pokédexes, he said softly. For example, did you know that there are actually 3 variations of the move Psychic? Every trainer knows about Stage 2. That's the kind used in battle to halt and damage an opponent. You're experiencing it right now. Most trainers know about Stage 1, too. The painless variation that can be used to get fruit from a tall tree or stop somebody from falling. Almost nobody knows about Stage 3. Here, he rose but turned his attention back to Drew. He tried not to wince as the pain racked his body spasmodically. Stage 3 Psychic is a blast of intense pain. It generally takes years of dedication and practice before a Pokemon can use it effectively. Even those who do know about it rarely try and teach it to their Pokemon. It just takes too long for them. But if a Pokemon does learn how to use it... He paused. Its strength is equal to that of a legendary Pokemon Stage 2 Psychic. It even affects Dark types. He looked for a moment at the setting sun before returning his focus to the helpless coordinator. So tell me, Drew, he said. Are you prepared to experience Gardevoir's Stage 3 Psychic? Okay, now I gotta do some, a little bit of prep work here. Because, Nintendo had a really bad naming scheme for a lot of its songs in Fire Emblem Awakening. Ash hugged the limp body of the coordinator to his chest fiercely, hot tears cascading from his eyes. He was oblivious to the movements and words of his companions, his gaze fixed on the girl he had loved. The girl he loved still, even in death. Oblivious to the heat of the fever that still burned through her clothes, he rocked gently back and forth, unable to accept the fact that she was really gone. Something clanked gently against his foot. Surprised, he automatically reached down and picked the object up, staring at it uncomprehendingly. He didn't understand why this, of all things, would be here in a Pokemon Center. Char! Everyone started at the sound, and one of their eyes sought the source. Standing on the shredded and charred remains of May's knapsack was a small Charmander. It ignored them all, its gaze fixed sourly on the prone body of May as it moved towards her on somewhat unsteady legs. Charmander? Ray asked. Why did May have a Charmander in her bag? Eliza gave me that egg that Charizard's mate had laid before I battled Cynthia, Ash said softly. I gave it to May just before we left Pallet Town. I guess it must have just hatched. Char! Little Charmander squealed, trying to scrabble its way onto the bed. Dawn came forwards and gently lifted the newborn onto Ash's lap. The Pokemon hummed, curled itself up comfortably, and reached out to touch May's body with its snout. Yay, Charmander. Am I right? A blinding orange glow cascaded through the room, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. The light was almost unbearable, amplified by the whitewashed walls and coloring every inch of the room in an orange tint. Rising high above the shouts of shock was the sound of the Charmander humming, a long, loud drone that reverberated throughout the room, its body the source of the light. Slowly, the intensity of the glow faded, although the people and walls were still painted in an orange light. No, it's impossible! Professor Oak shouted from the screen as the light became bearable, and he beheld the Charmander, It's impossible! What's impossible? Ray yelled above the humming. What the Charmander is doing! Rock shouted. I don't get it! She screamed as the Charmander's humming stopped. There, that's better, she sighed. Why is what the Charmander doing impossible? There are 3 criteria for a species of Pokemon to be selected as a starter type in a region, Professor Oak explained. It has to be a grass, water, or fire type, have 2 evolutions, and have one of 3 abilities. For your fire type, that ability is always Blaze. What this Charmander is doing now is not Blaze, he said, gesturing at the still glowing Pokemon. What is it doing then? Don asked. It's Flash Fire, Rock answered. Yes, Flash Fire, Professor Oak agreed. When a Pokemon has the Flash Fire ability, it absorbs any fire-type attacks that are targeted at it to power up its own moves. To be more precise, it absorbs the heat of the fire and makes its own moves hotter. Because the heat is absorbed, it makes the actual fire attack useless. A flame with no heat has no power. The heat that does the damage and attack, not the actual flames themselves. When a Pokemon has used Flash Fire, the power of its attacks will remain the same, but the intensity is increased. And because it's the heat from the fire, not the fire itself, which activates the ability, Flash Fire can occasionally be activated without needing a fire-type attack, he concluded. Realization dawned on Ray's and Dawn's faces. So, you mean that this Charmander is trying to use Flash Fire to absorb the heat from May's fever and bring down her temperature? Ray asked in disbelief. Exactly, Professor Oak confirmed. Then his face fell as he looked at May's body, still held in Ash's arms. Ash himself was still staring at the Charmander with a look of pure astonishment on his face, not having heard a word the professor had said. But I'm afraid it might be too late, Oak said softly. And that was when they heard a sound that gave them all hope. Beep. Beep. So what could be happening? What could be happening? Oh! Okay. Now, I think we are mostly caught up. And now for the last chapter of this thing. And then we'll be all caught up. And then, yeah, and then Aiden will actually have a VOD to watch. That hopefully doesn't stink. Chapter 30. Hostage. Also, by the way, can I just say... So, I've been using Xehanort's music a lot in this stream. Because I have been. Anyway. Giovanni watched, impassive, from behind foot-thick walls and glass as 20 men struggled to carry a massive cage. The legendary Pokemon within, through the blast doors leading from Namba's lab. Its long, sinuous neck darted in every direction as it let loose a screech of rage, jabbing its beak at the men that transported it. The pecks collided against the bars with an incredible force, sending sparks cascading downwards. You did very well, Giovanni said softly as 2 figures, both as tall as he was, approached from the dark recess by the door. Thank you, boss, said the first, a broad-shouldered man with spiked yellow hair that swept over to one side. First the Rayquaza, now Moltres, Giovanni continued. Every Pokemon you capture is one less Pokemon that I have to pay Hunter J for. And by capturing the Moltres, you've already done more than those idiots Cassie and Butch could hope to accomplish. The second lither man nodded, his long steel-gray hair shining slightly into the dim light of the room. I will admit that the Moltres caused us some trouble, but not as much as we had feared. He paused for a moment. With modifications made by Professor Sebastian to the Miracle Crystal, we can use it to attract any Pokemon, not just electric types. It worked well with Moltres, and if 2 or 3 more can be constructed, we could get the last legendaries much more quickly, his partner interjected. Giovanni bristled and turned to face them. Do you have any idea what it would cost to make more Miracle Crystals? He demanded. A prototype, which is destroyed when you attempt to capture Raikou, was a small fortune, and the one you used to capture Moltres cost twice as much. It's not really my place to say, the smaller man said carefully, but Knowing the costs of both the Miracle Crystal and of Hunter J's service, it would seem to me that a small fortune could be saved by building, using, and reusing the crystals rather than just relying on Hunter J's service for each individual Pokemon capture. Giovanni frowned, deep in thought. Attila, get Professor Sebastian, ordered the first man. Nodding, Attila turned and quickly left the room. How many Pokemon can be contained within a Miracle Crystal, Hun? He asked the second man. Hun opened his mouth to respond, but was forestalled by an almighty crash, an unearthly scream from the room beyond the thick walls and window. Giovanni whirled and was, for once, rendered speechless. A cage, supported by 40 grunts and containing a Heatran, was passing by the Moltres cage as it was taken to Nama's lab, and the Moltres was returned to the storing hold. One of the men had abruptly let go of the cage and fallen, tripping up 3 other carriers as he went down. With the sport of 4 men missing, the strain of the cage and the heavy Pokemon within became too much for the others. As they shouted warnings to each other, the imbalanced cage began to slope at a dangerous angle. Those closest to the imbalance began to panic as the weight became too much for their soldiers to bear, and fearing that they would be crushed, jumped to safety. The Heatran cage tipped, the corner becoming lodged within the bars of the Moltres' cage. For a moment, all seemed frozen as the Moltres and the Heatran stared at each other, separated by mere inches of steel and air. With a shriek, the Moltres began to glow orange, reared back its neck, and shot forth a sizzling burst of the most powerful and intense flames that had ever been seen. The steel bars had been specially crafted to resist any impact, temperature, or Pokemon attack. It was no match for the raw power of an enraged legendary Pokemon. The flames disintegrated the cage bars easily. All the grunts ran for cover from the intensity of the attack, and the heat could be felt even through the foot-thick and reinforced glass that protected Giovanni and Hun. With a guttural roar, the Heatran charged towards the legendary bird, its head glowing silver, seemingly unharmed by the attack. The Moltres slapped its wings to gain what little air room it could, and it shot forwards towards the opponent in a blazing orange blur. The Heatran stumbled and collapsed with a grunt of pain as the sky attack hit its mark. Moltres screeched at the collision with Heatran's heavy armored head, bouncing away almost comically. It quickly corrected its balance and wheeled around to face the Heatran. The injured Pokemon twisted its head and shot forth a powerful burst of flames at the flying type. Moltres reacted in kind, its attack easily disrupting Heatran's flames and powering through to completely envelop the weakened Pokemon. Ordinarily, Heatran would not have been affected by any type of fire, even those from another legendary. But the Moltres had been infected with Nama's mutant virus, the Purporus, powering it up to an unnatural levels. What's more, the sheer force of the sky attack had actually caused a small crack on the steel helmet of the Heatran. Flashfire was no protection against this. Get armed grunts in there now! Giovanni ordered through an intercom. Take down that Moltres immediately! One man, sensing the chance of a promotion, leapt out from behind a stack of crates and threw the first thing that came into the remnants of the cage, a wrench. It clanked against the Moltres' back, serving only to irritate the legendary Pokemon further before it was incinerated by the sizzling heat of its body. The Moltres wheeled angrily and unleashed a blistering fire attack. The man had time only for one quick as-an-ice scream before his body and life was consumed by the flames. Hun turned, covering his mouth at the sight of the man's blackened corpse smoldering. Not even Giovanni was immune from a fleeting urge to vomit. Several more grunts dashed into the room, followed by a horde of Blastoise, Vaporeon, Swampert, Pelipper, Poliwrath, and Feraligatr. They stopped short at the sight of the dead man's smoking body, and then bravely began to inch their way around the room, trying to surround the Moltres. Everyone in position? One man yelled. Hydro pumps and hydro cannons on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3! Numerous powerful jets of water blasted across the room, each one aimed directly at the Moltres. The Moltres let out a screech and began to glow a deep red. Giovanni watched, a grim smile on his face as each water attack impacted the legendary Pokemon, immediately covering the room in thick, billowing steam. Not even a Moltres could stand against this.
Well, hon, it would appear that we shall need another mole trace, Giovanni said, turning to face him. Hun did not answer, his gaze riveted on the window over Giovanni's shoulder, his mouth slightly agape. Frowning, Giovanni turned his gaze back to the holding room, noticing that it was still swathed in steam. A faint orange-pink prick of light was visible in the center of the room. It quickly grew much larger and brighter. No, it's impossible, he breathed through the spot. For the remainder of his life, Hun would be unable to explain where the sudden urge of energy came from. Snapping out of his astonishment, he realized that the approaching light would mean both their deaths if they had stayed watching. Neither could they run out the door. Or neither could they run out the door. That left only one option. Grabbing Giovanni by the back of the neck, he somehow managed to force his superior's considerable frame to the ground. Seconds later, the light resolved into an immensely powerful flamethrower that easily blasted its way through the reinforced glass. Giovanni instinctively covered his ears, and when he dared remove his arm, found himself staring into the face of the Moltres. The Pokemon's eyes were tinged with hatred, insanity, and something altogether more human than he had suspected. For the first time in his life, he felt a gut-wrenching, tingling sensation that he realized must be fear. The Moltres opened its mouth, and Giovanni laid there, frozen, the realization that his life was about to end, blocking out all other fault. And then, inexplicably, the Moltres hesitated. It let out a screech that reverberated within his very soul, and then, glowing orange once more, shot upwards through the ceiling, paving its way to freedom with Sky Attack. The thermometer beeped. For a brief instant, they didn't realize what was happening. And then the implication struck. "She's alive!" Brock shouted, running towards the bedside.
Wouldn't an ECG determine if someone's alive, not a thermometer? Anyway.
Nurse Joy quickly grabbed the thermometer before he could accidentally knock it away. 110, 109, 108. I don't believe it. Flashfire's actually taking the fever out of her body. I've never seen anything like that in my life, she exclaimed. Brock, Professor Oak cut in from the video screen. You said something about a pustule on her chest? Oh, right, Brock said, snapping back to the situation at hand. We think it may be the Pokerus. Professor Oak paused for a moment. That's impossible, Brock, he said. The Pokerus can only be transmitted between Pokemon. Humans are immune to the disease. Professor, they had all the same symptoms that Latias did when she was infected. You saw how both she and Latias reacted to high-pitched noises as well. I know it seems impossible, but there's nothing else to explain the infection, Brock replied. Professor Oak contemplated this silently. I need a clear shot of the pustule on her chest, he said. If you're going to try and cut it out, wear gloves before you touch it and vacuum seal the pustule in a lab container. Send it to me through the transfer machine below the screen, and I'll examine it with Gary. I don't think it's the Pokerus, but it could be a related disease that's known even less. Got it, Brock nodded. He turned to Ray, Don, and his brother. You'd all better clear out of the room, he said. What? Ray protested. But why? Because this could be dangerous, and we don't need any distractions, he answered. So where are you and Ash staying? She asked with narrowed eyes. I'm staying to control the professor's viewing screen so he can guide Nurse Joy through this, he said. And Ash? Don asked. Ash is staying because, for some strange reason, he actually seems to be able to control those suffering from Pokerus. He was able to calm Latias down when she was infected, and did the same with May a few moments ago. Besides, it's only right that he of all people be allowed to stay here for this. Ray's eyes narrowed. So you're saying that Ash is somehow superior to us and therefore allowed to stay and watch? She asked. I'm saying that, given the depths of his friendship with May, he has the right to be here with her as she undergoes a painful surgery, he answered calmly. He's right, Forrest said quietly, his mouth dry as he backed his elder brother up. He'd only be a distraction, and do we really need to stay and watch somebody's chest get cut open? Ray's mouth worked for a few seconds, but no sound came out. At last, giving up, she turned and left the room without a word. Don and Forrest followed her silently. Once outside, however, Ray abruptly turned and pushed Forrest against the wall. Ray! Don gasped, shocked. Don't you ever do that again, she seethed, ignoring her. Forrest looked up at her in amazement. Do what? He asked. Go against me like you did just now. I'm trying to offer my support, and then you make sure that support is rebuffed, she snarled, punctuating each remark with a jab of her finger to his chest. It suddenly struck Forrest how much taller than he really was. His eyes narrowed. Is it really May you're worried about in there? He asked. Or are you only concerned about Ash? Would you really be that upset if May suddenly died today? May reeled away, looking as if she had been slapped. Get away from me, you squint-eyed freak! She growled, turning and storming away. Dawn stared after her roommate, open-mouthed. She thought about running after her, then, changing her mind, turned to Forrest instead. Are you okay? She asked in concern. I guess so, he answered. You rock-type trainers are pretty tough, you know. Behind his bravado and eyelashes, John could still see a glimmer of tears. What she said, it was uncalled for, she said uncomfortably. It was the truth, he said simply. I mean, not the way you or I saw it, but to her perception it was. She was offering support, and I did go against her. Not in the way she made out. Did I do any better? Forrest asked. I accused her of having a crush on Ash, and I insinuated that she wouldn't care if May died because it would give her a chance to be with him. Her feelings must have been pretty hurt by that. You saw the look on her face. I guess you were both a bit out of line, Dawn said, still feeling comfortable. I don't know Ray that well yet, but I know her well enough to be pretty sure that she'll be feeling pretty bad about the way she just acted towards you, and what she called you. Both sides feel bad after an argument. Makes me wonder why sometimes we have them, and all it causes is grief. I guess it's because everything has to have an opposite, and it's an opposite to love. Most people would say that hate is the opposite to love, Dawn said. Hate is usually spawned from conflict, Forrest answered. The school child hates his bully, the oppressed hate the oppressor, and in an argument, both sides will hate the other, even if it's only for a brief moment. Dawn looked at him curiously. He resembled his older brother in so many ways, but he was surprisingly philosophical for a love-struck teenager. There was something very intriguing about him. Why do you and Brock have such squinty eyes? She blurted. His mouth dropped and she winced, mortified that she had actually said that. Then, to her complete surprise, he laughed. I can open my eyes as well as the next person, he demonstrated, chuckling. He chuckled, demonstrating. It's not a genetic deformity, it's a training tactic that my brother discovered. Huh? She asked, surprised that he wasn't offended and that there was actually an answer. Just after Brock became the Pewter City gym leader, well, his face darkened momentarily. He began to do some serious training to make sure that he'd be a good gym leader. During a power cut, he accidentally found out that by closing his eyes almost all the way, he had opened to sense where his Pokemon was in the field. After a little extra practice, he could sense his opponent's Pokemon too. Got to the point where he could predict how his Pokemon and its moves could be affected by the terrain on the battlefield. So, to help him develop this technique, he began to keep his eyes mostly closed all the time. He kept crashing into things at first, but over time he was able to sense everything around him, no matter where it was. Parked car, bicycle that would suddenly cut in front, even a shovel left on the ground by one of my sisters. And that meant that he could use his Pokemon more effectively at any location, not just the Pewter Gym. So you decided to try it too? She asked. Forrest nodded. Yeah, and all my brothers and sisters too. Even my dad started doing it when he was selling rocks on the outskirts, although my mom always said that she'd never seen the point. It really works, though. I'm not as good as Brock is at it, but then he's had so much more time to develop it. You have to really know your Pokemon for it to work, though. You should know it as well as you do yourself. That's amazing, she said. It really makes me respect my brother, he said. What do you think about how many Pokemon he has and how quickly he bonds and battles with them? Most of the time, he's underappreciated for what he brings to Ash's group. Nice little moment there, isn't it? I like those little moments. Ray stormed out the doors of the Pokemon Center. Her fear was so great that she didn't even feel the cold night air as it brushed against her body. That blood-struck, perverted, squint-eyed bastard! She muttered, spitting out each word harshly as she moved, completely unaware of where she was going. With a great clang, she reeled backwards, clamping her hands to her mouth in pain. Ow, that hurt! She moaned, looking to see what had smacked into her face. With intense embarrassment, she realized that she had gone into a park just across the road from the Pokemon Center and walked straight into a swing set.
She sat down on the swing, feeling her jaw gingerly. One side of her mouth was slightly warm and sticky, and she realized that she must have split her lip. Grumbling under her breath, she rummaged in her bag, trying to find something to wipe away the blood.
Here, take mine,
The massive man said, offering her a clean cloth. She shrieked in surprise and fell backwards off the swing, sprawling onto the ground with legs still tangled in the seat. She hadn't even noticed him sitting next to her.
Hey, she moaned. It sure looks that way, the man agreed. It's quite a spectacular crash you had with the swing. I tried to warn you, but you didn't seem to hear me even though you were only a couple feet away.
He then averted his eyes.
And I'd suggest the next time you decide to fall over like that, you wear a longer skirt.
Well, don't just walk! She shouted.
I'm not,
Protested.
that's why I turned away.
First, stay away! She warned, struggling to get back up. It only took her a few seconds to realize that her legs were tangled, running her hopelessly overbalanced. I'm stuck, she complained. Help me up!
You gotta be kidding me.
The man sighed. He reached out a hand, grabbed Ray by the arm, and pulled her up effortlessly. Thanks, she moaned. I'm sorry. I spilled my lip on a pole. The man squinted in the dim light, examining her mouth.
Yep, you got a mighty fine fat lip there already. Here,
He said, offering his cloth again. This time she took it with a minimal amount of drama and gently dabbed at her bleeding lips. Thanks, she said again.
no problem.
The man replied as he sat down on the swing again. It creaked under his weight. Ray suddenly realized just how large this man was. Not fat, just big. Even in the dark, she could see his muscles straining against the fibers of his shirt. She was no slouch when it came to height, but he was also a good foot taller than she was.
Something wrong?
The man asked pleasantly, noticing her stare at him. She looked away before she could see the red tinge streaming up her cheeks. No, she managed to say. He nodded towards the Pokemon Center.
I'm looking for a guy named Forrest,
He said.
Do you know if he's in there?
Her eyes narrowed. What's the weird guy? We'll bring him out, she groaned. The man looked surprised.
Really?
He asked.
May I ask why?
And so Ray launched into a full and vociferous tirade on just why she was out here with a bleeding lip and why she hated Forrest so much. In the end, it was the need to take a breath of air that caused her to stop ranting. A pause the stranger quickly took advantage of.
Right, I think I'll go and have a talk with this Forrest,
He said, standing from the swing and cracking his knuckles menacingly. Ray paled. You won't hurt him, will you? She asked, completely unaware that she was talking properly again. The stranger noted the concern in her voice and smiled slightly to himself, an action completely obscured by the darkness. His reply, however, was gruff with a hint of danger in it.
I let my Pokemon do the talking for me, baby,
He said, striding off towards the Pokemon Center.
I have a score to settle with him, and this only makes me want to do it more.
Baby? I'm not a baby. Ray stared after him for a few seconds before she realized that this man was quite possibly on his way to beat Forrest to a pulp. Wait! She shouted, tearing off after him. Wait! Rock, can you adjust the screen a little? Professor Oak asked. I need a closer shot of that pustule. Sure thing, Professor, Rock noted from off camera, zooming in on May's chest. Brock, I need to see the pustule, not her breast, Oak sighed. Sorry, Professor, I don't have an external screen to go on. Can you tell me where to shift the lens? Hi, Yubi, how are you doing? Left, down a bit more, left. Okay, hold it there. Took a close look at the pustule, noting its color, contours, and size. It does look a bit like Poke Rust, he admitted begrudgingly, but we won't know for certain until I can examine it here. You're good? That's good. I'm doing well. Really hungry, though, but I'm gonna try to finish this chapter here. Like, finish the scene. So, and then I'll be able to finally eat something! But I hope your Sunday is going nice and relaxing. How will you be able to do that? Brock asked. Your lab was destroyed. My house was destroyed, Oak answered. But my lab and research storage room were kept safe because they were built underground and reinforced for safety. All of my equipment is still there, so I should still be able to examine it. Professor, Delia called, coming down the hallway. There's a nice young man here who would like to help you out with the rebuilding effort. Oh, that's very nice, but I'm a little busy at the moment, Oak said, barely glancing away from the screen. I'm so sorry, Delia said, turning to the new arrival. Would you like some dinner? It's just out of the oven. I'd love some, thank you, he answered politely, flicking away a strand of dark hair that was straying into his eyes. I've come a long way to get here, and a home-cooked meal would certainly be a nice change from the typical traveling fare. I'll be right back with your plate, Delia promised, heading into the kitchen. Joy, make an inch-long incision just below the pustule. Brock, make sure that you pad the area thoroughly with the absorbent foam. You want as little spillage as possible. Hold her head steady, Ash. We don't want her to start thrashing around again, Oak directed, his eyes focused on the screen and completely unaware of the man standing behind him. The front door burst open, and Tracy and Norman walked into the room, chatting lightheartedly. Tracy's smile froze and fell as he beheld the young man standing nearby the professor. Oh, so you found the house? Okay, I guess, he said. The man smiled, once again sending shivers down Tracy's spine. Yes, your directions were exemplary, right down to the Mr. Mime, he said softly. Norman, although not affected by the smile, did not like his tone, or the look in his eyes. He took a step forwards. Who are you? He demanded. I'm sure I've seen you somewhere before. What do you want here? Norman! Oak called, the sound of his voice causing the professor to realize his presence. Norman, I'm on the line to the Vermilion City Pokemon Center. May's very sick and she's being operated on right now. What? Norman shouted, his face pale as he dashed forward towards the screen. Here's your tray, Delia sang out, backing out of the kitchen with a heavily laden dish. The stranger moved faster than any of them could follow. Delia shrieked and dropped the tray as the cold hard blade of a scyther pressed against her neck, released from the stranger's Pokeball. He ducked behind his Pokemon and hostage as Professor Oak and Norman turned to the commotion, and Tracy started forwards. Nobody move, he growled. My Pokemon are trained to kill if necessary. The scyther's blades are sharp enough to cut right through her neck if I give the order. Professor, there's too much bleeding! There's enough foam to absorb it! Brock shouted from the screen, his panicked voice sounding tinny to their ears. Answer that, and this woman dies, the stranger growled. But it's my daughter who he's trying to help, Norman pleaded. Professor Oak, are you there? She's beginning to thrash around again. Ash can't hold her. She's losing too much blood. We can't stop it, Brock shouted again. Her life doesn't concern me, the stranger answered. Give me what I want, and you can save 2 lives tonight. If you don't, this woman and your daughter will both die. What is it that you want? Oak asked, comprehension beginning to dawn as Kurt's words came back to him. This guy is ruthless. Once he found out I didn't have the GS ball anymore, he used his Pokemon to knock me out. He won't be afraid to do the same, or worse, to you. He remembered Kurt's description of his attacker inwardly cursed. This man was identical to him in every aspect. How did he get here from Johto so quickly? I want the GS ball, the stranger said simply. I don't have it, Oak replied, also simply. The girl who took it from Kurt never delivered it to me. Scyther? The man ordered, and the Pokemon put more pressure on the blade held against Delia's neck. She turned white as it bit through her skin, and a little spurt of blood began to pool on the blade. You're lying, he hissed. Kurt told me that he gave it to a girl on a Pidgeot, who then gave it to you. Norman gasped as the realization struck him. She forgot, Oak said, forcing himself to keep calm. Then where is it? The man growled. It's still with her, Paul, Oak said, looking him straight in the eye. If Paul was surprised that Oak knew his name, he didn't show it. And where is she? He asked. Oak hesitated before answering, turning instead to look at Norman. The gym leader's face was tortured. His whole world was resting on this one pivotal answer. If it wasn't given, May would die, and Delia along with her. If it was given, May could still die, but she had Ash to protect her, and he would know that Paul was coming. His eyes closed, misery and pain still etched into his face. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. Oak closed his eyes and answered. She's his dying daughter, he answered softly. Paul looked at them incredulously and swore. Can't be. It's with her and she's with... Professor! Brock screamed from the video phone. Oak took a chance. Brock, trust me when I say that this is a matter of life or death, he snapped. Does Ash still have the GS ball? What? Does Ash still have the GS ball? He roared. Of course he does. Who else would have it?
Rock shouted back. She's dying, Oak! You have your answer, Oak said softly, looking at Paul with an expression of pure loathing on his face. Honchcrow, through the glass! Paul shouted, unleashing the dark type and jumping onto its back. There was the sound of shattering glass, a streak of red light as Scyther was recalled, and then nothing. The stranger was gone. Shivering, Delia collapsed to the ground in a state of shock, her eyes wide and blood still flowing from the cut on her neck. Tracy, help me with her! Norman shouted. Sam, you can still save my May. His words were lost on deaf ears, the professor already intent on the screen, explaining to Brock why he would explain his disappearance later. And now that is going to be it. Now, I think y'all can probably see why I wanted to re-record this. A lot of important stuff happened. And it just would not do if, you know, if something just, if it just, you know, died. You know? Who wants that? But alright. Well, now that that is done, though, yeah, I'm gonna end things off here. I need to go eat some food, and hopefully join Pika for some Splatoon if he is still playing. Yeah, I'm not gonna read out today. I really just want to get something in my bloodstream, get something in my stomach, and yeah. But yeah, I appreciate you all for coming in to watch this re-recording. Y'all are still crazy for doing so. I don't know what possessed you to do so, but yay! Now I can. Hopefully, this VOD will actually be like, you know. Hopefully, people can actually still listen to this and know what the hecky is going on. So all right. Now, so we finished this, and tomorrow evening we will continue this. Actually, we'll continue where we left off. After this hostage situation had been resolved, and I hope to see you all there. So, take care, everyone. See you then. Peace out.